Chapter 251. Who are you people? Oleg frowned, looking at the several strong men who suddenly broke in. But Nikita's face turned a little ugly. Among these strong men, one of them had a bandage on his arm and obvious bruises on his face. "Oh, Nikita, I hope you still remember us." One of the injured strong men sneered. "Thank you for your care a few days ago. We went to your house and found you didn't go back. We have no choice but to wait for you here. You see, haven't we been waiting for you?" "Nikita, who are these people?" Oleg frowned and looked at Nikita. Nikita stammered, They're my thugs." "Did you borrow money from them?" Almost instantly, Oleg had guessed Nikita's situation and couldn't help but be furious. "I've told you many times, let you—" Oleg took a deep breath, shaking his head. It was useless to say these things now. He looked at these strong men and said in a low voice, "How much does he owe you?" The man sneered, "Oh, sir, I'm afraid it's not just a matter of money. There's a bigger problem. Our boss told us to ask Mr. Nikita to go back." Nikita saw something wrong and subconsciously stepped back 2 steps. But these strong men seemed to have expected this. They came up to him, and 2 of them easily caught Nikita. "Stop!" Oleg frowned and suddenly shouted angrily, "Are you going to help this bastard? Please let go. This is a private house. If you mess around again, I'll call the police." Oleg still said in a low voice. These burly men suddenly burst into laughter, as if they had heard the funniest joke in the world. One of them went to Oleg, looking at Oleg's stronger and taller body, and said with a grin, "I thought you would beat him, but you said to call the police. Tut tut, it really makes me think I'm looking at an old woman. Huh." With this, he stretched out his hand and patted Oleg's cheek gently. Oleg subconsciously grabbed the man's wrist and suddenly twisted it. The man screamed like a pig being slaughtered, but Oleg didn't stop. Instead, he lifted his knee and hit the opponent's stomach. The burly man screamed again and fell to the ground. Oleg's eyes suddenly became fierce. The moment the big man fell to the ground, he clenched his fingers into a fist and punched at the big man's chest again. However, the moment the fist was about to hit the other party's chest, it abruptly stopped. No one stopped it. It was just this incomparably strong man who stopped and withdrew his hand. There was a hint of struggle on his face. "Bastard!" Another big man picked up a hockey stick at the door and smashed it on Oleg's back. Under this violent impact, the baseball bat was forcibly broken. Oleg looked back, his eyes as fierce as a lion's, making the sneak attacker's heart skip a beat. Bang! But at this moment, Oleg's head was smashed by a huge vase. The vase was smashed, and a trace of blood flowed down from Oleg's forehead. He fell to the ground and fainted. "Oleg! Oleg!" Nikita screamed in horror. The big man who was knocked to the ground at the beginning climbed up at this time. He spat out a mouthful of blood, pressing his abdomen with an ugly face. "Go! Take these 2 guys away." When Anton returned to the apartment, which was newly rented by Nikita, he lived in this place with Uncle Nikita these days. It was good to live here. Nikita also bought a video game. Anton never tried to play video games until he was sleepy without doing homework at night. But when he came back with a big bag of food and opened the door, Anton showed a strange expression, because the apartment was now in a mess, as if it was destroyed by a beast. Anton hurriedly called Nikita, but he couldn't get through his phone. He didn't know how to deal with the problem here. However, he found a piece of paper with an address on it stuck to the back of the door. And there was a message. "If you want to save your agent, come alone. In addition, you'd better not consider calling the police, or you will receive your agent's body in advance as a Christmas gift this year." Uncle Nikita. Anton suddenly put down the things in his hand, grabbing the paper behind the door, rushing down the stairs, and running to the big sister's house. But he was very confused about the address, but he thought he could call a taxi. The dealer sweated profusely, but had to continue to distribute the cards in his hand. On the other hand, there was a man and a woman sitting quietly across from him. You have to believe that the attraction of a beautiful woman was always greater than that of a handsome man, especially in this place full of male hormones. But even so, many people gathered here paid more attention to this young man. To be precise, the The man with an Asian face even thought that he was speaking an unusually local Russian accent, so the dealer had no way to distinguish which country this person was from. 221 Cien wins. When the cards were opened, the dealer seemed to be more powerless. He could only announce with a reluctant, loud voice, swallowing his saliva, pushing the chips in front of the gambler. This was the 23rd round. Of course, it was not strange to win 20 or 30 rounds, as long as the number of bets was enough. But what if he won 23 rounds in a row? This was no longer a problem that could be calculated by probability. This was strange, extremely strange. The dealer even swore in his heart that if this guy didn't cheat, he would cut off his fingers. Unless he was God. God was sitting in front of him. Oh, God? Thinking about how ridiculous this idea was. So he must have cheated. But why didn't the manager give any instructions? The dealer was waiting anxiously and began a new round of shuffling. At the same time, he began to figure out the intention of this guy who won 23 rounds in a row. In fact, even if he won 23 rounds in a row, the money he won wasn't much. It could even be said that it was pitiful. That was because this guy only placed the lowest amount of bets and never raised them. Was he playing around? Or is he mocking my strength? Or is he deliberately provoking me? Thinking about it, when he got to the 5th card, he had to face the same situation. 221 Cien wins. Oh, my God. It was already the 24th round. The dealer couldn't help but wail in his heart. The Cien won 24 times in a row, and all of them were 21 points. The dealer really felt that he might be able to apply for the world record for the most unlucky dealer. He just didn't know if there was such a world record. Slow down a bit. No, manager, this is the slowest. I can't see anything at all. Where's the boss? The boss is in the basement. Isn't he interrogating Nikita in person? The boss doesn't like to be disturbed when he's having fun. Then you tell him that a guy won 24 rounds in a row. No, my God, is this guy a magician? It's already 25. Go. What are you waiting for? Okay, maybe it was because he ran out of luck? Nikita couldn't help having such thoughts when he was complaining. His internal organs seemed to be stirred together, and he felt that he was going to die. Suddenly, his hair was grabbed by someone. It was the boss of this place, Andrew. Mr. Nikita, you're better at enduring than I thought. Nikita coughed painfully. Mr. Andrew, I've said that I can repay the loan you owe me right away. Why do you still torture me? What kind of person was Andrew? He was almost as strong as Oleg. In Nikita's impression, he was different from those bosses who passed the test and enjoyed life. This guy was unusually strong. Mr. Nikita, maybe you don't know. Andrew smiled. In fact, very few people know that I'm not only the boss of this place, but also the owner of the ring below number 78 Nevsky Avenue. What? Nikita opened his eyes wide. Oh, God. Nikita felt that he had understood the reason why Andrew caught him this time. That kind of ring was naturally not an open place. Such a ring was basically controlled by the banker. Although it was a slogan that anyone could fight on the ring as long as they had the ability, it was obviously just a means to attract more gamblers. Nikita never thought that it was a long-term solution to let Anthony stay in this ring. He only planned to use the shortest amount of time to obtain enough benefits from this arena. He planned to stop before he completely infuriated the Zhuang family. But he never thought that he would irritate the other party so quickly. Mr. Andrew, I can return the money I won these days to you. Nikita suddenly begged. Andrew just sneered. Nikita hurriedly said, I also promise that I won't let Anthony participate in your ring in the future. Don't worry, he won't appear again. Andrew said indifferently, Mr. Nikita, don't you think it's a little too late to let that guy leave the ring now? Anthony is a popular person now. If he suddenly disappears from the ring, I believe my reputation will suffer a great loss. And these losses are far more than what you've won. You? What do you want? Andrew raised his eyebrows and smiled. You know what? I used to be a boxer, but I've never seen such a powerful guy. He should always stay in my ring and become the overlord. You want Anthony to serve you? Nikita could not help exclaiming. Andrew said indifferently, He'll be here soon. At this time, there was a knock on the door of the room in the basement. Andrew suddenly smiled and said, Look, it seems that he's already here. Ignoring Nikita's ugly expression, Andrew opened the door and looked at his men, saying first, "Has our guest arrived?" "Boss, there's a guest upstairs. He has won 25 times in a row." Chapter 252. He quickly rushed to the monitoring room. Andrew had been exuding a beast-like aura. In such a huge city, Andrew naturally had his outstanding points and extraordinary methods to reach his current position. Money was a very good thing because it could buy the services of many politicians. Because of it, Andrew could do a lot of things outside of the restrictions. Perhaps there was a bloody smell on him that even cologne could not cover. "Is this the guy?" Andrew's eyes were like a falcon's. "Yes, boss. Now he has won the 31st round. And what's strange is that he always puts in the minimum amount of money and never raises." The manager's face was naturally ugly. "We have to feel lucky that he is not playing baccarat. Otherwise, even if he only puts in the minimum amount of money every time, I'm afraid we will lose to other gamblers and go bankrupt." "Please invite this gentleman to the VIP room," Andrew said calmly. It was mentioned like this in a movie. It seemed that there were more plots in the novel, but it seemed that this kind of situation really existed. The VIP room was actually quieter than the outside environment. It was so quiet that only the casino's boss and one of his followers were sitting on the opposite side. Of course, on the other side, there were only Luaccio and Yu Yi. "How should I address this gentleman?" Andrew asked quite politely. He was not a person who believed in luck. He believed in his own hard work. Therefore, he did not believe that anyone could get this kind of winning streak because of luck. For this reason, Andrew was even more amazed. To be able to do this, naturally, he had extraordinary skills. And to dare to do this in a casino, naturally, he had extraordinary courage. Therefore, Andrew was suddenly very interested in this young Asian, no matter what the other party's plan was. "Call me K." Boss Luo felt that in this place, which was very far away from his hometown, he should be more casual. This kind of style is actually not bad, right? Maybe it's a bit old-fashioned. But if it's a personal interest, it doesn't seem to matter whether it's old-fashioned or not, right? "Mr. K?" Andrew nodded. Obviously, this guy did not intend to show his real identity. At the same time, the smile on Andrew's face became more and more sincere. "Oh, Mr. K, your skills really amaze me. I think it would be very difficult to find someone as powerful as you. I wonder why Mr. K is looking for me?" "Mr. Andrew, why do you think I'm looking for you?" Andrew smiled and said, "Mr. K is joking. Every time you bet with the lowest amount of chips, even if you win an astonishing number of times in a row, in reality, the amount you win is pitifully small. Isn't this a message for me?" Luaccio played with a chip that he had been holding from the gambling table outside. Suddenly, he knocked twice on the table and asked, "Mr. Andrew, have you heard of the Golder competition?" Andrew was stunned. After being stunned for a moment, his expression became abnormally solemn. But he quickly regained his relaxed expression and said with a smile, "This is the biggest and safest competition in the underground world. I think there should be many people who know about it, right?" Luaccio said, "It would be great if Mr. Andrew knows about it." With that, Luaccio glanced at the man in a suit behind Andrew. Andrew said indifferently, "This is my assistant." Luaccio also said indifferently, "At present, I have an admission ticket for the Golder competition. I wonder if Mr. Andrew is interested." Even though Andrew looked abnormally calm, his slightly moving eyes betrayed his inner thoughts. For him who knew what the Golder competition was, it was really difficult to maintain his inner calmness at this moment. An admission ticket for the Golder competition? That was not something that could be obtained with ordinary wealth. Wealth, reputation, status, and even power, none of these things could be missing. But Andrew was obviously a very suspicious person. He lit a cigar with the help of his assistant and slowly took 2 puffs. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "The admission ticket in Mr. K's hand, is it fake? In the last competition, I was really unhappy about the loss." Luaccio pretended that he didn't hear it and kept talking without any fluctuation in his heart. "So, I had to dispose of all the trash under my name and plan to buy some new ones. There are many ring owners in Moscow, but I heard that Mr. Andrew's ring is good. So I thought about it and came to you first." "You want to buy boxers from me and then go to the Golder competition?" Andrew couldn't help frowning. In the underground world, the transactions between boxers and the black market were not strange. It was just like the world of football or basketball, where the transactions between licensed clubs that lived under the sun were the same. But since he wanted to buy boxers, why did he mention the Golder competition? Luaccio said indifferently, "Why did you deliberately reveal the Golder competition to Mr. Andrew?" Right? Andrew was startled at this moment. This young fellow had actually seen through his thoughts at a glance. However, he smiled calmly and said, "Isn't this normal? Why did Mr. K mention the competition if it's just a simple transaction of boxers?" If it's just a simple transaction of boxers. Luaccio blinked. "I'm afraid I can't buy the most powerful boxers for Mr. Andrew. Mr. Andrew is a sensible person. You should know the gap between first-class boxers and second-class boxers. Well, let's put it this way. I don't want to buy second-class or third-class boxers at the price of first-class boxers. I don't care about the value of boxers, but I just want clean boxers." Andrew said casually, "Rest assured, Mr. K. The boxers in my place are absolutely clean. They have never used any drugs or hormones. They are not the paper men who can only serve as models and wither away immediately." Speaking of this, it seemed that they should continue the conversation. But under Andrew's astonished gaze, this guy who called himself Mr. K suddenly stood up. Well, the woman he brought with him, who was indeed exceptionally beautiful, was carefully tidying up his clothes. Although there were only two of them, their aura was strangely displayed. "Mr. Andrew, please think about it," Luaccio said indifferently. "I'll come back in 2 days. I hope I can see your best boxers by then. Of course, Mr. Andrew is not the only ringmaster in Moscow, right? By the way, I'll give this back to you. I had a good time today." Boss Luo suddenly flicked his thumb, and the chip he had been playing with was flicked into the air and then fell on the table in the VIP room. The moment it fell, Luaccio had already pushed the door open and left. Andrew watched the two leave until the door was closed, but he didn't move. His eyes slightly squinted in the smoke released by the cigar. "Boss, this guy's background is unknown. Should we call some brothers?" Andrew suddenly waved his hand, slowly sighing, and then pointed at the chip on the table. He didn't pay much attention to the appearance of the chip at the beginning, but only regarded it as Mr. K's act of showing off. His assistant frowned. He suddenly felt something was wrong, walking to the middle of the table. After a careful look, he opened his mouth in surprise. Chip, this chip of the smallest denomination, was indeed lying on the table at this time. Only it was sinking. What should he say? For example, in a muddy ground, a rock that was smashed down would be considered as a heavy object. This was the same for a bargaining chip. The assistant took the chip out of the table with difficulty, weighing the weight of this chip, and said inconceivably, "Boss, how did this guy do it?" Andrew took a deep breath and said, "I don't care how this guy did it. What I care about is whether he really has the admission ticket to Gort." "Boss, what is this, Gould?" "This is—" Andrew was about to speak, but the door of the VIP room was open again. The man who came in saw only the boss and his assistant, so he directly said, "Boss, that Anton came alone." Chapter 253. "Boss, what is the Golder competition?" Andrew looked at his confidant and said indifferently, "It's an underground boxing competition. We call the participants the boxing masters. Each boxing master can send 3 boxers to compete. The death rate is infinitely close to 100%. Infinitely close? Andrew nodded, because only when the opponent is killed can it be considered a victory. The boxers go to the ring empty-handed and fight in the special ring. There are no restrictions until one of them is declared dead." The assistant frowned and said subconsciously, "What if the 2 boxers are from the same boxing master in the final round? Then they kill each other." Andrew heaved a sigh and said, "No matter how many people participate, there will only be one winner, and there will only be one survivor. There is such a cruel boxing competition." The assistant's palms couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Although Andrew was also an arena master, there were often situations where he was beaten to the point of being unable to stand up again, or even being beaten until he was crippled. It wasn't uncommon for these boxers to be seriously injured and die in the future, but if it was only considered a victory if the opponent was directly beaten to death in the arena, then perhaps not many boxers would be willing to go on stage. It was a veritable life and death ring. The rules of the competition are so cruel. Correspondingly, the champion will receive an unprecedentedly rich reward. Andrew frowned and said, but only the boxing masters who are qualified to enter the arena know what the prize of each Golder competition is. And all the boxing masters will abide by the confidentiality rules and won't say what the reward is. He looked at his assistant and said, but every year there's still countless rich people who try to get the entrance ticket to the Golder competition. Boss, do you want to? Andrew didn't respond. He wouldn't tell his assistant that he once had a close encounter with a Golder competition. Let's greet our guests first, he said indifferently. Andrew should be interested in the Golder competition. Leaving the casino. In fact, it was just a casino, but now they were standing on the roof of the apartment next to the casino. Did the boss of the club have the entrance ticket to the Golder competition? The answer was, of course, yes. Inside the club, there were many strange things with different purposes. Among them was the admission ticket for the competition, which seemed to be always effective. As for whether the owner of the club wanted to participate in such a competition, the answer, of course, was Mr. K was just running his mouth. Lucio looked down at the alley beside the apartment, at the grown-up Antonio. He looked at the time, then looked at Yu Yi and said softly, it's almost evening. Do you want to go somewhere to watch the sunset? The view of the Kremlin is not bad, especially from the president's office. Lucio looked at Yu Yi with interest. He suddenly liked this feeling. In the future, he would discover the servant girl's past little by little and bring surprises to himself little by little. Little by little, it caused ripples to occasionally appear in his heart, which was difficult to produce waves again. When Andrew saw Ndong being brought to him, he was absent-minded for a moment. He had a look at this man who was taller than him. He used to be from the underground boxing world, so he knew the power contained in this body better than anyone else. This was not a level that could be achieved by postnatal training. He was simply a natural-born boxer, a perfect fighter created by God. Where's Nikita? Anton looked at Andrew at this time, asking in a low voice. Perhaps it was because he had been fighting with people on that platform these days, or because he had grown up. Antonio felt that he was surprisingly not afraid at this time. If it was before, when he was still a child, he would have felt his heart beat faster and then fear when he saw these tall and strong guys. No matter what Nikita offers you. Andrew went straight to the point and said, I'll give you 10 times as long as you become my boxer for a reason. Wealth, villa, luxury car, beauty. As long as you want it, I can give it to you. 10 times? Antonio was stunned. He shook his head and said, Nikita didn't give me anything. We just make money together. I want to make enough money and then build my own base. Looking at the tall man in front of them, saying the word base, Andrew and his assistant were stunned. Base? Antonio nodded. I want to buy a piece of land with big trees and then build the biggest tree house on the big trees as my base. Who knew what Andrew and his assistant had experienced in their hearts at this time? Anyway, Andrew lit the cigar when he saw the mysterious Oriental guest. He forgot to flick the ash from the burning cigar, and the cigar that was about to burn out suddenly burned his finger. The burning pain made Andrew throw away the cigar in his hand. He coughed twice. This Anton, did he do it on purpose? Would a normal person say such childish words? But he still insisted on the principle of recruiting this guy, saying decisively, I have a piece of land with dozens of big trees. If you like it, I can give it to you directly. If you want a tree house, I can also ask people to build trees on those trees and give them to you. Really? Antonio suddenly showed a surprised look. Andrew's mouth was agape. What this guy said just now was actually true. He had seen too many people and could distinguish the authenticity of many people. He couldn't see through the mysterious Mr. K, but it didn't mean that he couldn't see through ordinary people. This Anton's eyes were so pure that there was almost no impurity in them. Oh God, of course. I never lie to my employees. Andrew nodded. As long as you can work for me, everything is not a problem. Antonio suddenly hesitated. But I have to see Uncle Nikita first. Uncle Nikita? Andrew was stunned again, but he didn't think too much. Maybe this was the reason why Nikita could become this guy's agent. Andrew looked at his assistant and nodded to indicate that it was better. The assistant understood and went out at once. After a while, the assistant took people to drag Nikita, who was beaten up, in. Uncle Nikita! Antonio was anxious at once. He ran to Nikita's side and supported his body. Then he turned back and stared at Andrew fiercely, saying angrily, "Why did you beat him?" "Nothing, just a misunderstanding." Andrew smiled and said, "This Mr. Nikita borrowed some money from us and ran away. Of course, it's all right now." "Oh, dear Anton, we'll be responsible for all the medical expenses of Mr. Nikita, and we promise to treat him well in the future and let him live a good life. Because you're already my employee, aren't you?" Nikita held Antonio's arm at this time, whispering in his ear, "Promise him first, then leave here. Don't confront them head on. Go back and talk about it later. Listen to me, cough." Antonio nodded and looked at Andrew. "I'm going to take Uncle Nikita." "Nikita is going back." "Of course." Andrew smiled and said, "I'll send someone to take you to have a rest. I have a nice villa in the suburb. Anton, you can live there in the future. Don't worry. I've also prepared some small gifts for you in the villa. I believe you'll like them." Unexpectedly, Nikita said at this moment, "Wait, Mr. Andrew, my brother is also taken away by you. Where is he?" Andrew was stunned and looked at the assistant. The assistant then said, "Well, we encountered some trouble when we invited Mr. Nikita back, so we brought one more person back. Then take him away." Andrew didn't care about it. After a while, 3 strong men worked together to drag a strong man to the front of the crowd. Oleg. His hands and feet were shackled at this time. The wound on his forehead, which was hit by the vase, was not treated. His face was stained with blood and covered with mud, and his body was wet with sweat. Even so, Oleg was still very tenacious. It took 3 strong men to suppress him. When Andrew saw Oleg, his eyes couldn't help but brighten. He only felt that there must be a terrible beast hidden in this guy's body. He believed that if there wasn't a better choice like Anton, no, the arena master wouldn't think there were too many good fighters. It was a pity that this guy might have passed his golden age. Even if his physique was still there, his physical strength and reaction were probably far worse than before. What a pity, what a pity. Send this gentleman away and give him some medical expenses. Andrew said indifferently, "We're civilized people." Unexpectedly, a voice that sounded like a roar suddenly rang out. Anton's eyes were wide open, and he walked towards Oleg step by step. He was so strong that he could look down on anyone here. Anton shouted again at this time, picking up a strong man who was holding Oleg with one hand, lifting him up with one hand, and then fiercely throwing him out. At the same time, he kicked out, and the terrible strength made the other strong man fly out. You treat him like this?" Along with Anton's angry roar, a terrible scene happened. Anton grabbed the thick iron chain that handcuffed Oleg's hands, and then pulled hard. The iron chain broke abruptly. Not only that, but the shackles on Oleg's legs were also easily broken. "You are." Oleg frowned at the guy in front of him. A strange sense of familiarity made him absent-minded. But at this time, Anton had already blown away the 3rd strong man with a punch. He walked towards Andrew step by step. "I don't want to work for you, because I'm going to beat you now. I'll beat you hard." Andrew was also a ruthless person. He suddenly snorted, calmly stepped back 2 steps, and said coldly, "It seems that you still need some training. Catch him. No one can leave today." The assistant quickly pressed a button under the table, and the office door opened instantly. Several strong men rushed in, and the number was still increasing. Without saying a word, these burly men pounced on Ndong, grabbed his hands, and grabbed his waist. But Anton had the strength of a god. Even if he was caught by 4 strong men at the same time, they still couldn't stop him. With a fierce shout, he turned his body, and the burly man who was grabbing him was forcefully flung away. Even more burly men fell down and stood up, flying towards Ndong. But Anton's real horror was now seen by people. His muscles were as hard as steel. Punches on his body couldn't shake this giant, who was like a Siberian bear. However, his fists were like iron hammers. When they landed on a person's body, They could directly knock down a 200-pound man. I'm going to beat you. Chapter 254. Anton's fist heavily struck towards Andrew. However, Andrew, who had experienced countless battles in the ring, had a wealth of experience in this regard. He dodged Anton's fist very cleverly. The fist hit directly on the bookshelf behind Andrew, and the thick wooden board couldn't resist Anton's fist. At the moment when the fist hit the bookshelf, Anton swept his arm fiercely. His strong arm, like a bulldozer, broke the wooden board on the bookshelf at once, and then swept towards Andrew. Andrew raised his arms at the same time to protect his face, but he couldn't resist this terrible strength. He just resisted for a while, and his body kept retreating uncontrollably. At the same time, his arms were almost numb. Andrew even felt that the bones in his arms were about to break. He didn't know how terrible this guy's strength was until he felt it himself. But in this luxurious and spacious study, there was not only Andrew alone. Stop. Otherwise, I'm afraid you can't see this guy again. Andrew's assistant shouted in a deep voice. Anton had to stop at this time. At least he knew what this guy was holding in his hand and what situation Nikita was in now. The assistant's pistol was pointed at the back of Nikita's head at this time, so that Nikita had to raise his hands tremblingly and squeezed out an ugly smile. Hey guys, I seem to be holding you back, right? But if you tell me that it's just a stick behind me, I'll definitely praise you. I also hope it's just a stick, Oleg said carefully, and at the same time looked around quickly. Andrew's men had already climbed up, although they all looked uncomfortable under Anton's violence. Now the situation was suddenly reversed. Anton even had to stop in a panic. How should he deal with this situation? Suddenly, Oleg shouted loudly. In a split second, Oleg jumped up all of a sudden. He was originally very tall, so the height he could reach with his jump was very impressive. Oleg's hands directly grabbed the luxurious crystal chandelier in the study at this time. With Oleg's fierce shout, he actually pulled down the crystal chandelier by force. The moment the flames spread out, the huge lamp fell to the ground. Out of instinct, the assistant subconsciously took 2 steps back. At the same time, Oleg's muscles bulged. He grabbed the crystal lamp and waved it crazily. The assistant was swept to the ground. Go, go, let's go, Oleg shouted crazily. Seeing this, Nikita quickly pulled Anton's arm and rushed out of the door. In the end, Oleg pulled the crystal lamp frame hard and stuck it on the door frame, temporarily blocking the door, and then left. Boss, are you okay? The assistant got up at this time, hurriedly walked to Andrew's side, and said in a panic. Andrew took a few deep breaths and paced back and forth with his hands on his hips. He suddenly turned around and said, "What are you still standing there for? Give chase, give chase." Yes, it should be safe for now. Oleg pulled down the blinds and looked at the situation outside. As for Nikita, he took out a bottle of wine from the tea room with great familiarity. He walked out while drinking with several cups in his hand. Oleg frowned and said, "Nikita, behave yourself. Don't touch the company's things." "Boss, if you don't stop the pain, will I die of pain?" Nikita sat down, gritting his teeth. He put down the cup and looked at Anton while pouring the wine. "This is the logistics company where Oleg and I work. Andrew may go back to Oleg's house to find us, but he will never think of coming to this place." Anton's face showed a touch of excitement. He was still thinking about what happened in the casino just now. He could not help looking at Oleg. "Dad, Mr. Oleg, you were so cool just now." "Huh." Nikita smiled proudly. "This is just a piece of cake. You don't know that Oleg overturned a gang alone that year. You may not imagine that the situation at that time was much more thrilling than this time." "Nikita, you talk too much," Oleg suddenly shouted in a deep voice. Nikita closed his mouth immediately. "I won't talk. I'll drink my wine," Oleg suddenly said at this time. "Andrew is not a good person. You offended him, so you can't stay here for the time being. You have to leave here as far as you can. When it gets dark, I'll send you to the station." "Brother, what about you?" Oleg said indifferently. "I won't leave until I find Antonio. Don't worry, if I want to hide, they won't find me so easily." Nikita didn't say anything, just nodded. Anton moved his lips and wanted to say something, but he didn't say it in the end. He looked at the full glass of wine poured by Nikita, suddenly took a sip and coughed immediately. "You'd better drink with Mags. Vodka is for adults, little brother." Nikita couldn't help laughing. Anton choked. "Who says I can't drink? I'm just not used to it." Nikita shrugged and staggered to stand up. "I'll go to the toilet. Call me if there's anything." After Nikita left, Oleg looked at Anton up and down. There were wrinkles on his eyebrows, both horizontal and vertical. "Have we met somewhere before?" He sat in front of Anton, looking straight at this young man who was stronger than himself, especially his eyes, which made him feel uneasy. "No." Anton shook his head, lowered his head, and played with the wine glass in his hand. Suddenly he said, "Mr. Oleg, if we had continued to fight, we would have been able to give that guy a good beating. Why should we leave?" Oleg said indifferently, "What happened after you beat him up? Tell him, don't make trouble." Oleg smiled and shook his head, picking up a glass of wine and shaking it. "That will only make him angrier. Young man, listen, unless you kill him, he won't stop making trouble for you. So, have you ever thought of killing Andrew?" "Kill?" Anton shook his head quickly. "No." Oleg closed his eyes, leaned on the chair, and said slowly, "Then, let's go. Go as far as you can, and stay away from trouble. Escape. Isn't that the behavior of a coward?" Anton suddenly said. Oleg suddenly opened his eyes. Sitting here, he didn't look scary. "Young man, nothing is more important than life. Escape is not necessarily the behavior of a coward, but what?" Oleg shook his head, saying indifferently, "You'll understand it later. Besides, I have no obligation to teach you anything. It should be your father's responsibility." Anton suddenly lowered his head. "Never told me these. That's a terrible father." Oleg poured a glass of vodka in one breath, smiling and looking out of the window. After a while, he said softly with an affirmative tone, "Including me." Somehow, Antonio had an impulse to escape from Oleg at this time. "It wasn't the first time, right?" "Not yet. Wait right now." Nikita's dull voice came from the toilet, followed by a relaxed sigh. Then he said, "Who is it?" "Nikita, it's me." "Anton, wait a minute. I'll come out right away." Nikita touched the sweat on his forehead. Anton said, "Nikita, this Mr. Oleg, what kind of person is he? He's obviously very powerful, but I think he seems to be very scared." Nikita gave a start, saying after a long silence, "Did he say anything to you?" "No." "Really?" Nikita sighed at this time. "He's not afraid of anything. He just fell asleep. You know, the person who can wake him up is no longer in this world." "No longer in this world?" "His wife, Kamala. Mother." Chapter 255. Nikita had known Anton for only a few days, but perhaps it was because they had experienced danger together, and now they were in the same boat, or Anton gave him a feeling that he could confide in him. Who knew? Perhaps he was just hiding some things in his heart that he just wanted to say. But at such a time that was exactly the same as 12 years ago, he didn't want to say anything. Oleg has always been a very strong man. I have to say, he's really God's favorite. He's smart, he's strong, and he won the love of the most beautiful Kamala. "Huh," Nikita said with a smile. "In fact, like many people, I'm secretly jealous of the most beautiful Kamala and Oleg. But I'm different from others. That is, I also sincerely bless them both." Anton outside the door. Antonio seldom heard about his mother, Kamala, from Oleg. At this time, he was unusually quiet. He was so quiet that it was like falling asleep slowly while listening to the stories of his relatives before going to bed. "Mom, why did Miss Kamala fall in love with Mr. Oleg?" Anton asked softly. Nikita thought for a moment and said, "Probably because of his innate sense of justice. Believe me, Oleg at that time was really a guy who could make everyone feel ashamed. Once, right, our neighbor was harassed by several villains. When we were discussing how to avoid the disaster, Oleg had already beaten up these villains. Now that I think about it, the number of people who were taken care of by Oleg in the village is really a great number. But this great number is a joke. Why? When every person you've helped turns against you in the end, will you still feel proud of how many people you've helped? Nikita said with a cold and almost mean voice. Those who once said thank you with a smile in front of you finally said sorry to you, and then hurt you without hesitation. Oh, dear Anton, please believe me. That must be the most disgusting and sad situation you can imagine. But it's also the most helpless situation. Antonio frowned. He couldn't really understand Nikita's words. He could only ask, what happened? Nikita heaved a sigh of relief. Our village basically makes a living by mining. Do you know? In a mining area like that, the unfairness and the bad things that happen are far beyond your imagination. There was oppression from the top, as well as disputes between miners. After so many years, this has become a stable and balanced situation. As for what the outside world is like, for us who grew up there, we have no idea. The only thing we know is that in this village, in this mine, whoever has the biggest fist is the truth and the ruler. Nikita shook his head and sighed. But Oleg is born with a strong sense of justice. He resisted this kind of decadent lifestyle. He instinctively hated being oppressed by the forces in the mining area. He had the idea of protecting everyone. He even thought that as long as everyone united, no one could bully us at will. So he took action. At the beginning, because of Oleg's constant help and his reputation in people's hearts, many people were really anxious to resist. We resisted unreasonable overtime. We asked for more holidays. We asked for better meals. And we even started to go on strike. In the end, Oleg seriously injured several black foremen directly. Nikita said with a trace of nostalgia. At that time, it was the most hopeful time for the village in these decades. And Oleg was also regarded as a hero by us. But he didn't become arrogant. Instead, he worked harder to guard this hard-won hope. But Nikita's voice suddenly became sad. Oleg forgot one thing. That is, not everyone can be like him, with a strong body and courage, and the most important sense of justice. Do you know? The darkness in the mining area has never been dispelled. It just hides. Yes, it's like a poisonous snake, carefully hibernating in the darkness that can't be seen by the light, waiting for an opportunity to move. Who was it at the beginning? Anyway, I forgot. I only remember that day. When we were preparing for work as usual, a miner was found in his own home, and his left hand had been ruthlessly cut off. When we found him, his left hand was actually not bleeding because his left hand was very burned and all the bleeding places were sealed. And his cut-off hand was thrown on the edge of the wall, and a few words were written on the wall with the blood of his hand. No resistance. Nikita said with a wry smile, "Those people's revenge came too fast. Even we didn't have time to react. Do you know? We're different from them. They are scoundrels. They are real scoundrels. They're like evil ghosts. They are scoundrels who could do anything. Every day, we could hear which family in the village was harassed at night, which family's house was secretly set on fire, or who was beaten black and blue on the road." Nikita sighed. I really can't. No matter how Oleg persuaded everyone, there was no way to stop the spread of this fear. Even if we still have some people who have been persisting, but until that day, those people said that as long as Oleg is handed over, as long as everyone can return to their previous lives, they will stop causing trouble. They even promised that as long as Oleg, who led the trouble, is handed over, they will improve their work. Otherwise, it will get worse. Anton uttered a low cry. He suddenly felt his hands and feet were a little cold. Then, sorry, we didn't want to. I have old people and children to take care of at home. Sorry, they said, as long as you could surrender, they would let us go. I'm sorry. Oleg, I beg you, okay? You've been helping us all this time. This time, please help us as well. They said that they could cancel my gambling debt. Otherwise, I could only die. Sorry, Oleg, I'm really sorry, but we have no other way. We have never asked you to do so many things. This is just your own self-satisfaction. Nikita sneered. That's the most apologies I've ever heard in my life. I even know that they know what they are doing. If Oleg is a flag of hope, then they're cutting it down with their own hands. When they do this, it means that they are willing to continue to be bullied. But they have to do this. Who is not selfish? who is not willing to protect their family. Those guys are too clear about our weaknesses. They went too far. Anton gritted his teeth. Nikita didn't continue to talk about this issue, but said quickly. Oleg was completely enraged. He rushed out from the encirclement of many villagers and killed his way to that place alone. When he came out, we only saw his body covered in blood. But when he saw the villagers who were still holding all kinds of mining tools blocking his way, his heart was probably already dead after his anger. Nikita opened the door and came out with his pants. After that day, Oleg left with Kamala. I also felt that it was meaningless, so I followed Oleg out and went to live in other places. It could be said that we lived a peaceful life for a few years. Oleg and Kamala also had a child, but Kamala still died. Nikita took a deep breath. It seems that she died in a car accident, but in fact, she died in the process of revenge. Although we left the village, those people never intended to let us go. Shaking his head, Nikita washed his face and sighed. Since Kamala died, Oleg became more decadent. He had to be like this because he was afraid that he didn't know when he would rebel and implicate his only child with Kamala. It's just like those villagers who once said sorry to him and dealt with him by themselves. Nikita said with a trace of hatred. Those people, after killing Kamala, didn't continue to do anything to Oleg. I understand their thoughts. They want Oleg to live in this kind of pain all his life so that he will never have the thought of rebelling. Because it's too easy to kill a person, and killing a person's heart is the best revenge. He looked back at Anton, who was sitting on the ground. He was a little curious, but didn't ask anything. Instead, he sighed, Anton, remember, no matter how powerful you are, a person's power is only a person's power, and a person's justice is only a person's justice. They're too weak and helpless. This kind of helplessness and weakness can make a brave man, like a lion, be willing to be a sick cat for his child. He can only choose to resign himself to being bullied. Chapter 256. Are you ready? If you're ready, I'll take you to the station now. Seeing Nikita and Anton coming out of the toilet, Oleg walked to them and gave Nikita some money. Tell me when you settle down. I'll go back to find you if I have time. I know, but you have to be careful. Nikita was a very straightforward person. He knew that he would only be a burden if he stayed here. It was better to leave so that Oleg would not worry about him. Then go quickly. Don't waste time. Oleg nodded and then looked at Anton, saying apologetically, I'm sorry that Nikita got you into trouble this time. But his nature is not bad. He's just a little greedy. Hey, brother, are you praising me? Oleg smiled and said nothing. He just gave Nikita a hug. At this time, Anton said, I won't go. Both of them frowned at the same time, looking at the young man who was about 20 years old. Oleg looked at the young man's eyes, which were so clear that it was easy to read his thoughts. He had a frown. You won't go? Do you want to go back to deal with Andrew? Anton took a deep breath and said in a low voice, I don't want to be a coward. I don't want to be bullied like this. These are bad guys. Why should we be afraid of them? We have to fight back. Only by fighting back can we not be bullied. Oleg moved his lips slightly, but he didn't avoid the clear and familiar eyes. Instead, he said indifferently, You can think about these things when you're more mature. I'm already an adult. Oleg shook his head. No, you're still a child. When Anton was about to refute, the door of the logistics company was knocked open by something. When the door panel hit the wall, a guy appeared in the position of the door frame. He was Andrew's assistant, whom they had met in Andrew's study. Oh, everyone, I didn't expect that we could meet again. Time flies. Boss, we've caught Nikita and the others. Andrew, who was silent in the office with a frightening gaze, couldn't help but be stunned. Of course, it wasn't the study that had been destroyed, but the room that was temporarily set up next to it. Oh, so fast. Yes, boss, the assistant said with a smile. Maybe his men spread the news in order to find clues. Initially, he didn't think that it would be useful, but he didn't expect that someone would report it to him right away. We immediately brought people over. Many of our brothers were injured, but in the end, we managed to capture them. There was a bruise on the assistant's face, and his lips were pale. Fortunately, Nikita was just a burden. With him, Oleg and Anton had to give up resistance in the end. At this time, the assistant walked to Andrew's side and whispered, "We fired a few shots. Those two guys are really too strong." Andrew nodded. "That's just a small matter. Just give some money to those pigs, and it'll be done. The most important thing is to catch these two guys. Keep an eye on Oleg and Anton, especially Anton. This guy is born with great strength. I gave them anesthetics. Even an elephant can't stand up. Well done." Andrew smiled with satisfaction. He really needed to be happy. After the battle in the study, he was really shocked by Anton's strength. The next thing to consider was how to train Anton well. Of course, the slightly older Oleg was also a good choice. If this guy's physical strength was improved, he could be a superclass boxer. Andrew, who had been relieved, comfortably lit a cigar, squinted and said, "By the way, I asked you to investigate Mr. K. Do you have any results?" The assistant paused and said with a slightly ugly face, "Boss, I'm sorry. We can't find any information about Mr. K. In addition, when he was playing blackjack in the gambling hall, none of our surveillance cameras could show Mr. K's appearance." "What?" Andrew was stunned. "What do you mean?" The assistant hurriedly said, "When he was in the gambling hall, we clearly saw Mr. K's appearance through the surveillance video. And I can also guarantee that no one has touched these videos at all. But the strange thing is that when I opened them again, all the images of this Mr. K became blurry. How could this happen?" Andrew frowned deeply. He suddenly thought of that chip. After a moment of silence, Andrew slowly said, "Don't investigate this guy anymore. If he really wants to buy a boxer from me, he will appear again." After rearranging the overturned sofa, Luaccio sat down. This was the apartment rented by Nikita after Anton won the boxing match. Basically, the original things of this apartment were here. Miss Maid looked out of the window at this time, and then returned to Luaccio's side, whispering, "Master, the pawn used to report is back. He seems to be very happy. He should be rewarded. That is to say, Oleg and others have been caught." Luaccio opened a soft leather notebook at this time, reading and saying, "It's good that the father and son were caught at the same time in the gambling hall. But since they escaped, let them escape. It's not a big deal. I'll arrange for Andrew to prepare for tomorrow's meeting." Luaccio shook his head and said, "No, let's wait for one more day. I hope my father is a great hero." Yi tilted her head, her soft long hair hanging beside Luaccio's left face. "Anton's diary. When I ran away from home, I took it with me and put in my backpack." Luaccio turned a page and continued to read softly. His voice was red. "But my father is a bad guy. He forgot that today is my birthday. Today, I fought with Cass. Cass was no match for me, but he asked his father to come over. Later, my father also came. He didn't ask me why we fought. He kept apologizing to Cass and his father. It was Cass who teased me first. My father is obviously better than Cass's father. Why did he apologize? I don't understand. Is it true that my classmates said that my father is a coward? Today, Uncle Nikita and I said that my father is a great man. I asked him why he is great. He looked at me with a smile and said that my father took care of me until now and even dared to skip class. Isn't that great? I saw it. I saw it today. I don't think I'll forget it in my life. I saw my father kneeling to someone. I saw the man pour beer on my father's head. I know this guy is a scoundrel because I heard Auntie Catherine and the others talk about it. Oh, God, my father is kneeling to a villain. Did I see it wrongly? I don't believe it. It's not true. Is my father really just a coward? I don't want to be bullied. I want to grow up. I want to clean up all the people who bully me. New Year. My father is still working overtime. I eat at home alone. It's disgusting. I miss my mother, but I forget what she looks like. I can only look at my mother's picture. I saw the villain who bullied my father again. This time he bullied Kakachi's grandfather. Too hateful. So I pinched a piece of mud and threw it at him. But I couldn't outrun him, so I was caught and beaten. At night, my father called me to eat. I can only say that I'm not hungry. It's so painful. I want to grow up quickly. I want to grow up. I want to grow up. I want to protect my father. I want to protect Uncle Nikita. I want to grow up. I want to leave this house and prove that I'm an adult. Father, goodbye. I'll build a big base and train very hard there. Then I'll come back. The diary was turned to the end. Because he kept reading until the end, Miss May took a glass of water and gave it to Luaccio. Luaccio suddenly said softly, probably when I was 7 or 8 years old, I also thought about becoming an adult. Later, when I really grew up, when I was 16 or 17 years old. More or less, I felt that the idea at that time was quite childish and even hated children for a period of time. Luaccio blinked, especially naughty children. But obviously, compared to naughty children, 16 or 17 years old is almost the same. The so-called maturity is not much at all. Luaccio shook his head, mocking himself. I thought that after reading more books, listening to more specious truths, and perhaps experiencing some things that shouldn't be experienced at that age, I felt that I had grown up. But when facing problems, I was like a child at a loss. I thought that the way of dealing with problems was very good, but it was always full of mistakes. Later, I understood that it was not called growing up, but being sensible. The reason why I hated naughty children was probably because of a mirror. I hated my childish self. Luaccio looked at the clear water in the glass without ripples, saying softly, but obviously what I wanted when I was a child is grown up, but I can't realize it when I'm not a child. Miss May was a good listener for Boss Luo. She didn't express any opinions or enlighten him. Perhaps it was because of this company that he felt more and more comfortable. Maybe he even liked it? Luaccio smiled. Tonight, I want to eat braised meatballs, can I? Okay, I'll prepare the ingredients right away. Boss, Mr. K is here, and he's at the blackjack table that day. The assistant hurriedly ran in and said, but this time, Mr. K's first bet is 20 million rubles. Andrew was so shocked that he jumped up as if he was jumping. He naturally had to recall the horror and humiliation of being dominated by dozens of consecutive wins that day. He had to comfort himself that, fortunately, it was just for fun that day. But today, the first bet was 20 million rubles. This would make him bankrupt in minutes. Chapter 257. Of course, Andrew wasn't afraid of someone messing around in his casino. There were only 2 of them. If Mr. K really dared to do this, even if he was the emperor, Andrew didn't intend to let him walk out of the casino so easily. But he was quite afraid. He was afraid of this mysterious Mr. K, and at the same time, he was also afraid of the fact that he had an entrance ticket to the Golder game. Originally, the 2 of them had appeared in his casino in such a high-profile manner, so no one would believe that there was nothing special about them. Mr. Andrew, is this the best boxer you have in the ring? Through a large piece of glass, Luocchio looked at the muscular boxer inside the glass curtain wall. He shook his head, even though the boxer inside was trying his best to show off his strength. What? Mr. K is not satisfied. Andrew smiled. He used to serve in the army. Compared to the boxers trained under the same conditions, his combat awareness is definitely better. Luocchio said indifferently, if this is the best boxer you can offer, I think there is no need for us to continue the conversation. Turning around, the club owner nodded politely in front of Andrew. Well, I'll leave now. Please wait a minute. Andrew suddenly tried to stop him, but he also asked the people around him to leave. In this room, for selecting boxers, only he and Luocchio were left. He seemed to want to show his sincerity, but also wanted to know more. How can Mr. K prove that he has the admission ticket to the Golder competition? No need to prove. Luocchio said indifferently, now, Mr. Andrew, you don't have the boxers I need. That's enough, isn't it? Andrew was silent for a moment. In fact, he didn't like to deal with people of unknown origin, nor would he trust a stranger so easily. But he felt that this might be a rare opportunity. The closer he got to Mr. K, the more his heart beat uncontrollably. Andrew couldn't even tell whether this was excitement or worry, but his intuition told him that contact with Mr. K would be an extremely dangerous thing. The higher the risk, the greater the reward. Even if the other party didn't have an entrance ticket, it was impossible for them to take away the fighter without spending a single cent. After some consideration, Andrew slowly said, Mr. K, I do have a top-notch boxer on hand, and I also have a guy with superclass consciousness, but he's a little older, and these 2 guys haven't been tamed yet. I wonder if Mr. K is interested? Of course. At this moment, Boss Luo, who had transformed into Mr. K, chuckled. The harder it is to tame a beast, the stronger it is. Then I will wait and see. Bring those two guys here. Andrew opened the door randomly and gave the order. It didn't take long for Anton and Oleg to be taken into a room separated by single-sided glass. Both of them looked dispirited and listless. However, Oleg's eyes were still sharp, while Anton looked a little uneasy. Seeing that Mr. K was looking at them, Andrew said with a smile, "Mr. K, a good boxing master can see the value of a boxer. I think Mr. K should be able to see the extraordinariness of these two guys." Luaccio said leisurely, "No matter how powerful a beast is, if its claws are pulled out, it's just a little more ferocious than an antelope, but it's not powerful." Andrew said indifferently, "These two guys were just anesthetized by me. As I said, I haven't completely tamed them. I didn't want to beat them up to make them behave, either. An excellent boxer shouldn't be hurt in any place other than the ring." Luaccio suddenly said, "These two guys, which one is more powerful?" Andrew gave a start. This was also a question he had thought about before. According to the most intuitive power, Anton was undoubtedly a gifted genius, and he was young enough to be more powerful than Oleg, who was over 30 years old and whose physical strength was declining. However, after the scene in the study room, he realized that Anton was just a guy with brute force, while Oleg was good at observation and calm enough. These two guys, Andrew thought for a while, "I think each has its own advantages, so I can't give you the right answer." "That's a pity, they're really good," Luaccio said indifferently, "but I only need one boxer. If you can't recommend one, Mr. Andrew, it's really a headache." "Got it." Luaccio suddenly raised his eyebrows, with a playful smile like a villain. "Or, let them have a life and death battle, and the one who wins will be the one I need. Of course, I'll compensate Mr. Andrew for the one who loses. Mr. K won't let you suffer losses." "You want them to have a life and death battle?" Andrew frowned suddenly. "Of course." Luaccio chuckled. "Mr. Andrew, I'm going to participate in the Golder competition. You should know what it is. If you can't adapt to the life and death battle, and don't have the courage to face the rules of instant death, what's the use of me?" What he said was true, but Andrew didn't directly agree, but narrowed his eyes. Luaccio sat down, and the servant girl behind him walked to Andrew with a blank expression, with a check between her fingers. "This is the deposit. If you can satisfy our boss, the price is not a problem." If this check was real, then Andrew had to admit that the number written on it made him very excited. And it was just a deposit. To be honest, although Anton and Oleg were indeed very good, they were not cultivated by Andrew with great effort. To put it bluntly, these two guys were almost no different from those who were picked up. Therefore, just this deposit alone was enough to make him a huge profit. Mr. K is really a straightforward person. Andrew pushed the check back at this time and said seriously, "I don't need the deposit, and I don't even need you to pay for the boxer. I just need Mr. K to recommend me after the start of this year's Golder competition, so that I can become a qualifier before the start of the next competition." Luaccio said indifferently, "Mr. Andrew, you think I will have one more competitor in the future, right?" Andrew seemed to have expected it, and said calmly, "Mr. K, don't you want to have one more ally in the Golder competition in the future? Although only one person can win in the end, there are always obstacles on the way." Luaccio stood up directly and glanced at Anton and Oleg behind the glass. "When can they recover? I want to see this life and death duel with my own eyes." "As long as the anesthetic is stopped," Andrew said indifferently. "With their physique, as long as they get some nutrients, I think Mr. K can see a wonderful duel at midnight tonight. I will prepare the best VIP seat for Mr. K in my ring." "Thank you, Mr. Andrew." Luaccio nodded. "I hope this will be a pleasant cooperation." Andrew also smiled. "I also hope this will be a pleasant cooperation." Andrew liked to lock the disobedient guys in a special iron cage. It made him feel like he had hunted a beast. For example, now, he enjoyed the feeling of watching Anton and Oleg being trapped in the iron cage. He had been sitting here for more than half an hour, watching the expressions on their faces and even their gazes. This was the main course that Andrew thought was the most memorable one. "Tonight, after the anesthetic is over, I need you two to fight." Andrew opened the cigar roughly with his teeth, lit it, and puffed. He was indifferent and had a taste of controlling life and death. And only one of you can survive. Anton and Oleg looked up at Andrew at the same time. Oleg couldn't help sneering. "Sir, is your brain blocked because of excessive tobacco oil?" Andrew said indifferently, "You can choose not to fight, but you'd better not forget that Nikita is still in my hands. Do you know? In my villa in the suburbs, there are several pure-blooded Siberian bears. I think they will be very happy to eat you." Looking at Oleg's widely open eyes, Andrew chuckled. "Oleg, it's so easy for me to check a person's background in Moscow. You're Oleg, and you have a 10-year-old child. It seems that you ran away from home these days. I don't know if you can get out of this place in the end, because if you choose not to fight, I have to get rid of you." Oleg held the column of the huge iron cage, but he couldn't shake these thick iron bars because of the anesthetic. He had to sit on the ground dejectedly, subconsciously looking at Anton next to him. He clearly saw a clear fear in this young man's eyes, as if he was begging him not to agree to Andrew's request. Unknowingly, Andrew had left this place. There were many iron cages here, but only Anton and Oleg were locked in them. After a long silence, Oleg slowly closed his eyes, turned around, and whispered, "I'm sorry. I can't let Nikita die. I need to leave this place alive. I have to find my child, so I'm sorry. I didn't expect that there would be such a day when I would also say such words." Chapter 258. Let's eat, or the boss will be unhappy if you don't have the strength to fight. The assistant and his men put a lot of food outside the cage and laughed mockingly. "Of course you can choose not to eat, but you will miss the last meal in your life, one of you." Looking at Anton's angry expression and Oleg's expressionless face, the assistant looked at the time and said, "There are 4 hours left. Enjoy the last piece." The assistant and his men left. Oleg stretched his hand out of the cage, grabbed the food on the plate to his mouth, and ate silently. "Mr. Oleg, are you really going to fight with me?" Anton lowered his head and asked softly. However, Oleg didn't respond. He just tore off the meat piece by piece and chewed slowly. "We can resist when they open the cage." Anton raised his head at this time. "As long as we can save Nikita, we don't need to be threatened by them anymore." And then Oleg glanced at Anton indifferently. "Can you kill Andrew? Can you escape from here? What can your fists do in the face of their guns? Even if you can't do anything, can you only let yourself be bullied?" Anton asked loudly. "Aren't you angry? Aren't you unwilling?" Oleg suddenly said, "You may have a very good family. You may think that as long as you resist, you can solve the problem, or even you have solved the problem because of your resistance. But you may not know that some things, when you resist, will only bring deeper harm to yourself. In the end, you will even laugh at your own naivety. People are very selfish. For example, I am selfish now. I will kill you. If you don't want to be killed in vain and want to resist, eat more and become stronger. So you are willing to be bullied all the time and choose not to resist and become a coward. If you don't resign yourself to it, you will cause more harm, not only to yourself, but also to your family and your lover. You don't care, do you? Even if you kill me and successfully leave the ring, do you think Andrew will let you go? If he can threaten you once, there will be a second time. If you compromise, you can only be threatened by Andrew for the rest of your life. Everything I've done is for my family. Don't be so idealistic. Look at the reality. The reality is that you and I are now like this, like a stray dog. If you don't want to be threatened, you must resist. No one can save you, except yourself. Nikita said that the Oleg of that year was the one who deserved his respect the most. So I have to leave this place. I don't care what kind of life I have to live. I just need to survive. Look at you now. What are you? Have you ever thought about what your child would think of you if he were to see your cowardly behavior? Have you ever thought about how your children will feel when they see you kneel down in front of a villain? I have nothing left to have nothing. I can't lose have my son. What would a guy like you, who has never been a father now? What do you know as a hot-blooded young man who doesn't know what the world is? Do you think you're mature because you are taller and stronger than others? Bullshit. What did you say? The gradually louder roars suddenly came to a stop. In this battle where there was no gap between them, the gazes of the two people facing each other had never left each other, even though they were separated by the iron cage. It seemed that it would not stop, maybe until both of them were exhausted. But because of Anton's "if," they suddenly fell into silence. I said, "Antonio, you don't want to see what you are like now." Anton looked at Oleg. He had never been able to look at Oleg as an equal and even speak out his thoughts like now. Oleg took a deep breath. "You are not him, you don't know." He sat down with his back to Anton, saying indifferently, "Eat your last meal. I will never surrender." Anton also sat down with his back to Oleg, reaching out to grab the food and eating it. The two people in the iron cage were back to back. They couldn't see each other, let alone touch each other. What separated them was two worlds. Time's up. When the door was opened, the iron cage was also opened soon after. At this moment, Anton suddenly launched an attack. He was no longer weak because of the anesthetic. At this time, he was like a fierce tiger out of the cage, easily knocking down a big man. But when he intended to further resist, he heard the applause from the assistant. "Mr. Anton, I am relieved to see you so fierce now. But if you continue to perform, I don't know what will happen next." He moved one step away. Behind him, Nikita was tied up and walked out. Nikita's face was pale, sweating, and even his legs were trembling. He had to do this, because right now, he was wearing a very thick belt. The assistant sneered. "Do you know what this thing is? In a moment, it can shoot a poisonous steel needle from the belt. In less than 15 seconds, Mr. Nikita's heart will stop. Maybe he will go to heaven, maybe he will go to hell. Who knows? The controller is in the boss's hand. As long as Mr. Anton can leave here, it is the time for Mr. Nikita to start this gadget." "You are despicable. Are you still going to resist? Mr. K, what do you think of this ring?" It wasn't a weekly boxing competition, so the surroundings of the huge ring were unusually empty. Andrew was proudly showing his work at this time. "This is the most special ring. I was going to launch it next year. But now, I will let Mr. K see it first." Andrew pointed to the huge ring below. Iron bars had been welded around it, and it had been sealed. After the start, these iron bars will be connected with enough current. Andrew squinted. Only when one side wins according to the conditions, the ring will be opened. Otherwise, no one can come out. "Mr. Andrew, thank you." Luaccio smiled. His eyes suddenly looked down from the VIP room, looking at the side door of the ring. It seems that tonight's protagonist has arrived. The moment the iron door on the ring was closed, a loud sound of metal collision was heard. A big man under the ring took an iron bar and threw it towards the cage. Crazy. For a moment, sparks flew everywhere. The two people on the ring were looking at each other, speechless. Oleg suddenly shot out and fiercely punched Anton's chest. This punch was so ferocious that even with Anton's strong body, he had to step back again and again. The consequence of taking the punch was blood overflowing from the corner of his mouth. Anton slowly raised his head and looked at Oleg, saying slowly, "I won't fight back. But I won't stop." Chapter 259. When Anton was about to be pushed to the iron net by Oleg, Oleg suddenly gritted his teeth and roared. He suddenly lifted Anton's body and threw him to the center of the ring. The elastic ring made Anton's body shake a few times before he got up from the ring. Oleg walked to Anton and grabbed his collar, saying in a low voice, "Do you really want to die?" Anton lowered his head and said, "Didn't you already plan to kill me and become the winner? You could have won just now. You really don't want to fight back?" Oleg asked further. "Mr. Oleg, I've decided that I won't fight back. Do you think you're great?" Oleg's face was completely sullen. "Do you know that I may not thank you and may not feel guilty for what you did to me? Even I may try my best to forget all this. I'll treat your sacrifice as something that didn't happen at all. You can only die here in vain, and no one will remember you. Even so, are you willing to do that?" Anton was silent. Oleg suddenly pulled Anton's arm and hit Anton's abdomen with his knee at the same time. The powerful impact caused Anton to spit out a mouthful of blood. Oleg was also a very strong person. Even if Anton had a stronger body, he still felt like being hit by a hammer when he let his guard down. The pain caused by the knee hit almost made him feel suffocated. Fight back! Fight back! Fight back! One punch after another, Oleg didn't reserve any strength. Instead, he crazily poured all his emotions into Anton. Straight punch, uppercut. Sweat splashed from Anton's body, and his red and swollen eyelids blurred his vision. Such a one-sided beating lasted for almost a minute. Anton finally couldn't support himself and lay directly on the ring, gasping. The spotlights above the ring dispelled the shadows around him. He looked at the dazzling spotlights and found his vision became pure white. He knew that Oleg's face appeared at the nearest distance. You really don't want to fight back. Do you think you're a hero? Bullshit. Idiot. I don't know. And Dong squeezed out a smile with difficulty. These few days I thought I'd grown up, and I really did. But I realized that the world of adults is still very complicated. I don't understand. I don't want to understand. I would rather have never grown up. Does the world of adults have to be so complicated? If I have the chance, I will definitely resist to the end. I won't say it, but if I have to kill you in this way to get out of here alive, I will feel very uncomfortable. I would rather die. Don't take your life so lightly. Oleg suddenly grabbed Anton's collar and lifted his neck, saying word by word clearly, Master's time is so complicated. There was no right or wrong. As long as you live for your own reasons, nothing else mattered. You only need to remember this. I don't understand, ahem. Anton slapped Oleg's hands away and stood up. I don't want to understand. I only know that I won't fight back, and I won't choose to kill you. Anton took a deep breath, and when he opened his eyes again, Oleg could already see something from this young man's eyes. And Dong, however, walked toward the iron fence step by step. You! Oleg couldn't believe it, and even panicked. He almost lost his mind. What do you want to do? If you don't do it, then I'll do it myself. I'm not related to you. Why do you want to do this to me? A kind of timidity made Oleg's heart uncomfortable, as if it was being pierced by a steel needle. This young man was half a head taller than him, and this huge figure. He was about to die. Because I am. Anton took a deep breath and said softly, because I think, Mr. Oleg, your child would not want to see his father become a murderer in order to save him. Anton suddenly kicked his legs and directly jumped on the iron net, like a huge moth to a flame. This iron net, filled with high-voltage current, would completely destroy his body in the next second. Anton, Oleg's eyes almost split open. He didn't know whether it was because of anger or sadness. He didn't suffer any injury in this arena, but now he felt more uncomfortable than being beaten for several hours by others. Anton had already jumped on the iron net. He even closed his eyes to feel the pain of the strong electric current that was about to hit him. The burning pain seemed to penetrate deep into his bone marrow. In just a moment, Anton felt as if his body was pierced by tens of thousands of sharp needles. He instinctively let out a heart-wrenching scream. However, this extreme pain came in an instant and disappeared in an instant. Anton suddenly fell on the arena. His body was still leaning on the iron net, but the current seemed to have disappeared. Suddenly, there was an unusually loud applause around the arena. The applause came through the loudspeaker, and it was because of one person, Andrew. After the continuous applause, Andrew said to the microphone, "What a touching performance, but unfortunately, this is not the performance I need." Andrew's voice suddenly became like that of a beast. "I don't care who you want to die, but before you die, you'd better squeeze out all of your strength to deal with the opponent in front of you. Don't try to provoke me in this way, because you don't have the qualification. If you don't attack each other with all your strength, I will press the button in my hand 10 seconds later. You will definitely hear Nikita's scream before he dies before you get angry." While speaking, Andrew even kept paying attention to the expression of Mr. Kane next to him. Since Anton gave up resisting, he couldn't see any expression on Mr. K's face. It seemed that he had lost interest in this arena battle. Not to mention Mr. K, Andrew himself also didn't like this kind of situation in a life-and-death duel. Not to mention others, even he himself didn't want to win a boxer in this way. With Andrew's words, the door on the side of the duel arena was opened again. Two strong men took Nikita out and walked to the front of the arena. Andrew said coldly, Why don't you guys fight each other to death in the arena? Why don't you three become roasted pigs together? I'll give you 1 minute to consider. Restore the electricity. At this time, Oleg quickly pulled Anton back. Anton was still leaning against the iron fence. After Andrew finished, he turned off the microphone and looked at Mr. K next to him. I think Mr. K should be able to see what he wants to see after 1 minute. No. Mr. Andrew, Luaccio turned his head and looked at Andrew, smiling. I think I have seen it. See what? Andrew asked subconsciously. But at this time, a roar came from the arena below. Nikita suddenly knocked away the two strong men and bumped into the iron net. Hey, brother, next time when you introduce me to others, remember not to say that I'm a greedy guy. He held his belly and finally bumped into the iron net. Bang! At the moment of sparks, there was only a loud explosion sound and Nikita's painful cry, and his figure fell to the ground. Nikita. Ever since Oleg's furious roar, the entire arena had become quiet. Andrew in the VIP room slapped the table and stood up. The guards under the arena also opened their mouths in surprise. Oleg knelt on the arena powerlessly and said in a hoarse voice, Nikita, you idiot. Cough, cough. Don't call me. I'm an idiot. Cough, cough. At this time, Nikita, who fell to the ground, suddenly turned around. His face was full of pain and his mouth was twitching. He didn't die. Nikita, Oleg shouted excitedly. Nikita coughed and laughed. It seems that the beer belly these years is still a bit, cough, cough, a bit useful. The special belt around Nikita's waist had been cracked. This guy didn't intend to commit suicide. He just intended to destroy the circuit in the belt through the electric current of the iron net. You guy, you're crazy. Oleg was surprised and happy. Nikita couldn't get up, but he was still very optimistic. It seems that being an electrician a few years ago was not a waste of effort. Oleg, come out. Don't lock yourself in the cage again. You're the most powerful person I've ever seen. In this world, there shouldn't be a cage that can trap you. I followed you to escape from the village these years, not to see an Oleg who had his claws pulled out, but to see an Oleg who stood up again like a lion. Oleg, clenching his fists. What are you doing? Catch this lunatic for me. If you don't die, I'll let you die again. Andrew, who was still completely enraged, roared. Seeing that Nikita was once again in danger, Oleg tore off his clothes and trousers, quickly wrapping them around his palms, and then grasped an iron net pillar with one hand. The muscles on his hands bulged horribly. The blood vessels on his neck were as clear as the old roots on the ground, and his face even turned red. He was yelling, ah! Andrew couldn't help sneering. He had decided to cancel the deal with Mr. K for the time being. These fellows were indeed not properly trained. He was a bit too hasty in preparing. While thinking about how to deal with Mr. K, Andrew was also waiting for the moment when Oleg was exhausted. Idiot! How can a human bend such a thick iron bar? One may not work, but two may not. Luaccio stood up at this time. His eyes were full of a strange color. He approached the edge of the VIP room's window sill, pressing his hands on a window frame, as if he wanted to see everything below infinitely close. Below, Anton suddenly got up. Imitating Oleg, he tore his clothes and trousers, wrapping them around his palms, and roared, Me too. Oleg didn't say anything, just nodded to the young man. Two pairs of arms for palms, roaring like waves. These two men were like the kings of beasts. They were about to be released from a cage. Two. Flames were everywhere. Two lions were released from the cage. Andrew. The moment he jumped down from the arena, Oleg's eyes were extremely sharp, looking up at the VIP room above. Under the dazzling spotlights, he could only vaguely see two figures. Oleg didn't care who the other one was, but he was sure that one of them was Andrew. I don't care what method you use. Capture these two bastards for me. I want them alive, Andrew said in a low voice. Even now, he was still reluctant to destroy Anton and Oleg. These two fellows were simply too outstanding. They were simply the best warriors. Mr. K, sorry to spoil your fun, Andrew said calmly at this time. But don't worry, I'll deal with these problems soon. Please wait here for a moment. Saying this, Andrew hurriedly pushed open the door of the VIP room without waiting for the other party's response. Anton, although you have great strength, you don't know how to use your strength. Look at me. This is the way to hit people. Oleg's roar sounded in Anton's ears. A few days ago, this kid didn't know what it meant to grow up, and now he still didn't know what it meant to grow up. But after being stunned for a while, he revealed a happy smile. He didn't care where he was. He only knew that here, listening to Oleg's teaching and punching the enemy fiercely with his fists, there was an indescribable, refreshing feeling. Soon after, the sound of smashing and shouting could be heard clearly from the VIP room. It was the fight between the lion and the beast. But at this time, the club boss who had stopped watching sat down again. Luaccio opened his palm, and a silver necklace fell directly from his palm. At the end of the silver necklace, there was a cross pendant hanging on it. It slightly emitted a pure, pink light, flashing as if it wanted to tell something. Luaccio said softly, "Ms. Kamala, is Mr. Oleg the one you know?" Chapter 260. At the Sheremetyevo International Airport, the roar of the plane was still deafening, even though they had already left the airport building. "Yes, I've already gotten off the plane. I'm picking up my luggage now," Luaccio said calmly to the other end of the phone. But the person on the other end of the phone kept chattering, "Wait, what's the weather like over there? Did you bring enough clothes? Do you want me to mail you some more? Underwear? Is your underwear enough? Don't hang up on me." Beep. The servant girl, who was standing beside Boss Luo with a simple handbag, smiled. "Misrin really cares about Master." Luaccio glanced at Yu Yi and said thoughtfully, "I always feel that something happened between you and that woman in Louis Village." The servant girl, who was too loyal to the club boss, smiled. "Actually, it's nothing. Misrin taught me some interesting things in private." Luaccio asked curiously, "Oh, nothing good comes out of this woman's mouth. What can she teach you?" Yu Yi glanced at Luaccio and said smilingly, "A woman on top and a man on the bottom. Guanine sitting on the lotus, Let me think." Boss Luo, who intuitively knew that something bad would happen, was convinced that something bad really happened. He knocked his forehead lightly and acted as if nothing had happened. "Where's the taxi?" "Just in front." Seeing Yu Yi leading the way, Luaccio chuckled. Looking at her back, it seemed like a joke just now. It seemed to be the first time he saw Yu Yi making a joke since he became the club boss. Luaccio looked at the sky of Moscow, thinking that it might be because of this familiar place. Wait a minute. Why did Yu Yi describe the mess as a joke? Interesting stuff? Boss Luo, who had not been so confused for a long time, was at the Sheremetyevo International Airport outside Moscow. "Is this your first time here?" The taxi driver was a talkative person. Basically, all experienced taxi drivers were like this, right? Luaccio nodded. He knew that this experienced driver could observe his actions through the rearview mirror. "Business or tourism?" The old driver continued to ask. Yu Yi replied calmly, "It's the nature of the tour. Besides, can the driver not take this road? If we go around the Petrov Theater, I think it will be faster." The old driver was stunned, but he didn't seem embarrassed. Instead, he laughed and turned the steering wheel, driving in another direction. He knew how to strike while the iron was hot. And he said, "Speaking of Petrov Grand Theater, the two of you must take the time to see our authentic ballet. My card is in the bag at the back. If you two want theater tickets, I can get you a good seat." "No, thank you. Can we stop in front of the theater?" Luaccio suddenly said, "I want to walk around." "No problem." Soon after, the old driver greeted them. He didn't seem unhappy that he didn't attract more business. He drove back to the airport, looking very optimistic about life. "Master, do you want to go in and take a look?" Yu Yi asked softly. Luaccio looked at the surrounding scenery and shook his head. "Nothing. I just want to find a landmark to take a picture and stop someone from talking. Also, I feel like I'm going to stop here." The servant girl tilted her head, puzzled. But she soon got the answer. Luaccio's eyes were scattered around the small square in front of the Petrov Grand Theater. Soon, he walked directly to a bench in the square. The bench was for passers-by to rest. There was also such equipment around it, and there was a small fountain around it. When there weren't many people, it was a good place to relax, and there was shade. Luaccio suddenly stopped in front of the bench. A woman with long, chestnut-red hair and wearing a white dress was sitting here. The woman sat quietly on the bench and didn't seem to care about someone's approach. "Can I sit here?" The woman was stunned and subconsciously looked up. She looked at the young man with an oriental face who appeared in front of her and the girl next to him. "You guys, we're just travelers." Luaccio sat down and said softly, "We are attracted by people in need." The woman was silent for a moment, shook her head, and suddenly said, "But I am not a person. Maybe I shouldn't exist in this world, but..." She looked forward in a daze. In front of the fountain, an unusually tall man was silently looking at the fountain. He seemed to have been standing here for a long time. "Can't let him go?" The woman nodded and then shook her head. She was very indifferent. Looking at Luaccio, she softly asked, "Can you really help me?" Luaccio stretched out his hand. The woman was stunned. After hesitating for a moment, she slowly stretched out her hand. The woman's fingertips gently touched Luaccio's palm. As if she got an electric shock, the woman suddenly withdrew her hand, with a trace of surprise. "So, there is such a business in the world?" She shook her head again. "But if someone like me can't exist..." At this time, the tall man next to the fountain suddenly seemed to throw something into the fountain. That thing was glowing silver under the sun. Seeing the man throw this thing away, the woman's face suddenly showed an urgent look. She seemed to be excited. She even stood up. However, the unusually tall man took a deep breath, turned around, and left. The woman lowered her head, holding her chest, and sat down. Her face showed sadness. "That's your possession, right?" Luaccio asked softly. The woman nodded and said, "That's the gift he gave me when we got married. Because I was a believer since I was a child, he bought me a necklace." Her face showed a trace of reminiscence. "From a long time ago, he told me that he would take me to this opera house. In fact, many times we passed by here. Because of various reasons, we didn't fulfill this agreement. Later, I couldn't come here anymore." Her voice became unusually soft, and her eyebrows drooped. "But this fool, every year at this time, he would come here. But he might not come next year, right?" Luaccio nodded. The woman shook her head and said, "I don't blame him, because I know that he did this for me. But..." She resolutely raised her head and stared at the traveler. "Can you please help him? He has too many things on his back. It's too hard. He lives in his own cage and can't get out. Also, our children, their relationship is not good." Luaccio was silent for a while and said, "Think about it. You have nothing to pay except yourself. Maybe you can continue to live like this." The woman stood up, stretched out her palm, and smiled. "Can I make them happy?" Rolling up his sleeves, Luaccio personally picked up the necklace from the fountain. He held it under the sun and looked at the necklace covered with water droplets. It emitted more brilliance and was even a little dazzling. "Is it a cross?" Luaccio wiped the necklace with a square handkerchief little by little and turned to look at Yuyi. "I didn't expect to have a business as soon as I got off the plane." Miss Maid was not displeased. Instead, she said quite happily, "Master, you are so lucky. The quality of this soul is far higher than what you have received before." "Because of faith?" Luaccio said thoughtfully. Yuyi took the necklace from Luaccio's hand and looked at it carefully. Then she said softly, "Maybe after the transaction is completed, we will know." At this moment, a man in his 30s or 40s with a briefcase under his arm suddenly came over. A man with an oriental face. On such a hot day, the man's bangs were already wet with sweat. The man said, "Excuse me, where are you two from?" He spoke in fluent Mandarin. No matter what the man planned, Boss Luo already had his own plan. Luaccio smiled and said, "Sir, we want to take a picture. Can we trouble you?" "Of course. This is a small matter." The man smiled warmly, took his phone, and walked a few steps away. He waved his hand and shouted, "Well, come closer." "Well, eggplant." Chapter 261. The morning sun had not been shining for a long time, but the grass on the lawn was full of vitality. And on the lawn, a small figure was clumsily crawling across the grass. And his wife, who was about to take her daughter to school, was still shouting the name of the small figure. The club boss, who was watching the scene with interest, smiled, thinking that the direct confession just now was very cool. But it seemed that such a situation was actually quite common in China. Luochio shook his head, clasping his hands behind his back, and followed the small figure with Miss Maid, enjoying the scenery along the way. Not long after, Boss Luo had to stop his footsteps. On the tree-lined path that Antonio had just walked through, there was a man in a black robe leaning against a tree trunk, just beside the path. The man in the black robe held a thick black leather book in one hand, reading it attentively. He should be about the same age as Luochio, with a delicate face. If not for the figure, people would think that he was a girl. Boss Luo's eyes fell on the man as he walked, until he was about to pass by the man. The man put down the black leather book in his hand, suddenly saying, "Heaven is a paradise. Souls who believe in God and are saved can ascend to heaven. Sinners who don't believe in God and don't repent will be punished to hell after death." Luochio stopped, looking at Yu Yi with interest, and then looked at the man, sizing him up again. Then he saw clearly that there was a silver necklace around the wrist of the man's robe sleeve, and the pendant hanging down was also a cross. This kind of outfit was enough to explain the man's identity. Considering that this was Moscow, Luochio asked East. The man left the tree trunk, clasping his hands behind his back, strolling leisurely, but he said, "Heaven is the residence of God. There are angels in front of the throne, and Christ is sitting on the right side of God. There, the ground is paved with gold. The house is built with precious stones. The sight of the beautiful scenery, the ears listen to the music, and every sense can have a corresponding happiness." He finally stopped in front of Luochio and Yu Yi. In hell, there are inextinguishable flames burning everywhere, and vicious snakes and scorpions biting people. As for those who can't ascend to heaven but won't go to hell, they will first go to purgatory and suffer temporarily to purify their souls. After their sins are redeemed, they can then ascend to heaven. After the man finished speaking, he stood there quietly. Luochio shook his head and said, "Can every sense have a corresponding happiness? Heaven is indeed a very good place. Unfortunately, I can't go anywhere. The Lord is willing to forgive every sinner." The man smiled. "We will never refuse those who sincerely want to atone for their sins." "Oh, what should I do first?" Luochio asked curiously. The man said indifferently, "Please hand over Kamala's soul. She is a pure believer of our Lord. As long as she lets go of her obsession in the mortal world, she can ascend to heaven. You should not stop her." "I did not stop her." Luochio shook his head and said, "We're just responding to her expectations. However, I still haven't figured out what to do." Boss Luo added in his heart. The man said, "Kamala's soul has always been wandering around, unwilling to leave. As believers of our Lord, we did not force her and allowed her to stay. Our purpose is to wait for the day when she wakes up. When that time comes, she will ascend to heaven." Luochio reacted and said, "In other words, you have been secretly observing her since the moment she formed her soul? As long as the believer calls out to our Lord, we will appear," the man said indifferently. "We are more or less the same." Luochio smiled. He suddenly recalled the information in some old account books that he had casually read in the lower levels of the club. After the exodus from Egypt, Moses used 20,000 souls to make the sea recede overnight, turning the sea into a dry land. Are there a lot of pure souls in heaven? Luochio suddenly asked. He looked at the man in black robes in front of him. This was the third time he was sizing him up. He and Yu Yi were currently walking in a non-existent manner. Therefore, the people they could see were either people with needs or people who were more complicated than ordinary people. God loves the world and will open the door to heaven for those who sincerely convert. Naturally, there will be a lot of happy souls. The priest in black robes said indifferently. Although he did not understand the meaning behind this guy's sudden question, it was a question that did not need to be concealed. Luochio suddenly said, "Do you think you will ascend to heaven?" The young priest said calmly, "That is the only place where we belong." Luochio nodded and said, How about this? How about this? I will try to pray to your Lord and hope that he has a way to open this door for me. However, please forgive me for not being able to hand over Lady Kamala. First of all, she still does not belong to me. Secondly, There is still an unfinished agreement between us. For sinners who do not repent, we can only use the holy light to cleanse the evil in their hearts." The man sighed and said, "We do not promote the use of force." The man suddenly waved his hand, and the cross hanging from his wrist appeared in his palm. It turned into a golden light and transformed into a golden cross sword. Luaccio also said in agreement, "I am also not a violent person." In an instant, the smiling boss Luo appeared in front of the priest with a speed that the man could not react to. It was as if he had moved in an instant. Suddenly, a figure that was infinitely close to his eyes appeared in front of him. This made the pupils of the priest in black robes contract slightly. However, the hand that was holding the golden cross sword had already been lightly tapped by the other party. Therefore, if you can avoid violence, then don't use violence. The golden cross sword shattered in an instant like glass. Before the fragments of the golden light fell to the ground, they had already scattered. The priest in black robes was shocked and kept retreating. He opened his hand that was holding the cross, and the cross pendant in his hand had shattered at the same time. If you can recall what happened today, then please tell your Lord when you pray that we will go to heaven in a few years, because it is almost time to pay rent in heaven. When this young Oriental man appeared in front of him again, he only felt that his forehead was lightly tapped. Before he lost consciousness, the only thing he could hear was such blasphemous words to the Lord. The young priest was sent to the big tree that he was leaning against just now. She let him sit down and treat it as an afternoon nap. Luaccio then looked at Miss Maid curiously and said, "Speaking of which, when the club was operating here before, didn't we encounter these people's obstruction?" Yi said, "The previous boss didn't go out, unlike this person. Your master likes to walk around outside." The transaction was completed in an instant. Well, of course, the previous boss deliberately hid and let them live freely. Looking at the young priest who had fainted, Yi said softly, "Even because this priest is too young, there are some things that he may not know." Luaccio nodded and said with a smile, "You can just say that a person like me who likes to wander around will easily step on landmines. It's not like I can't listen to these words." Miss Maid smiled sweetly. They seemed to be taking a stroll. While talking, they walked out of the tree-lined path. When they passed by a convenience store on the street, Boss Luo had an idea and bought a piece of chocolate. When Anatoly woke up, it was almost dusk. He looked blankly at the place where he was and subconsciously wanted to rub his eyebrows. But at this time, Anatoly suddenly felt a strange touch from his palm, which made him stunned. When he opened his palm, what he saw was a fragment of the cross pendant he carried with him. The young god's face turned pale with fright, and he even broke out in cold sweat from the shock. He didn't care when he fell asleep and why he fell asleep, but quickly knelt on the ground and prayed, because his faith had actually been shattered. Vaguely, Anatoly felt that he should have forgotten something. "Where are you? Where are you? Do you want to eat chocolate?" Yin PS1. No wonder there's so many advertisements and various book reviews in the book review section these 2 days. It turns out that they are recommended by the client. Sure enough, the recommendation will attract bees and butterflies. Oh my god. PS2. As for the cleaning up of the fake account, haha, I only read the book review section once every few days. Even if there's a local tycoon on it, the chief will only find it after 4 or 5 days. Sorry, the local tycoon who failed to shoot. In the last stage of laziness, do I have to bother to clean up the fake account? Then who doubts that I am using a fake account? Please recharge your IQ. If I am a diligent person who knows how to clean up the fake account, will there be a fake account after 2 months? People who like to read, it will naturally read it. People who don't like to read, it will still not like it, no matter how they clean it up. Everyone has their own preferences. It has already been preconceived. I am really not interested in refuting. In addition, I will not PS on this issue in the future. Chapter 262. In Andrew's VIP room, Kamala, who had finally become a whole person, looked at the young man who claimed to be a businessman with a complicated expression. Maybe he was not young. Who knew? Kamala could not investigate these things. He turned Antonio into an adult, but took away Antonio's love. She had questioned this guy at first, but he said it was the rule. Once the transaction mechanism was triggered, it would definitely be carried out. Because Kamala wanted the father and son to be happy, which did not conflict with what Antonio wanted. Kamala began to feel that this transaction might not be as good as she had imagined. That's right. After Antonio grew up, this guy even wandered around aimlessly, looking as if he didn't care about anything after that. Until that day, when he personally went to Andrew's casino, Kamala began to realize that the boss of this club had started to plan something. Withdrawing her complicated expression, Kamala turned to look at the bottom of the VIP room and suddenly said, "Since you are omnipotent, why don't you directly get this result instead of forcing him to this point?" This should be the style of the previous boss. Sometimes, Luaccio would compare himself to see if it was better to be straightforward or to spend more effort. "Maybe it's just my personal interest," Luaccio said apologetically, looking at the arena below. "If it's just to change a person's mind and make him firmly believe in something, it's really not difficult for us. On the day we met in the theater, we could actually make Oleg become like this. But," Luaccio said softly, "I might not be able to see the beautiful brilliance that erupted from Mr. Oleg's body at that moment. You take pleasure in this." Kamala suddenly stared at Luaccio. She did not know whether this man had noticed it or not, but she could clearly see a faint smile on this Asian man's face. He was smiling. Luaccio became silent. He felt that Kamala's words were not wrong. He just felt that his emotions had become indifferent very quickly, to an incredible extent. As the club's boss, as long as he used it properly, there was almost nothing that he could not do. All the problems seemed to have become non-problems. In his vision, the whole world seemed to have become gray. No matter how beautiful a person or a beautiful creature was, there was no color. The only thing he could see seemed to be the light of each individual soul. Gray-white, gray-black, brown, and cold gray-white colors entwined his world. He did not feel afraid because of this, nor did he feel pain because of this. However, when this thing happened to him, he could not feel it. Luaccio had to start to reconsider what else he could want. Color. Luaccio felt his heart beating when a trace of color appeared in the cold world. When one soul turned from dim to blazing hot and exploded with light, the surroundings seemed to be dyed with color once again. Even if it was only for a moment, even if it was just like a match burning. When the match burned out, everything would return to darkness. Luaccio found that, although it was just for a moment, he could enjoy it every time. There was no need to explain anything, and there was no need to care about other people's opinions. When what he did was regarded as pleasure by others, then it was not wrong to define it in this way. If he could not even have this little interest, Luaccio felt that he should find a way to learn from the previous one and find a successor. "Yes, I take pleasure in this." Oleg did not know that at this moment, he was exuding a kind of radiance that he could not see, but could make a certain boss continue to have this happy feeling. He only knew that at this moment, it was like a flood that had been accumulating for a long time and finally got the moment to pour out. Resist? Not really. Just like what Nikita said, since he left the village, he had built a high wall in his heart, a cage, and completely closed himself. He was afraid that one day, when he insisted on his own way of thinking, his lover and his friends would abandon him in the end, just like those villagers who had abandoned him. They might be forced, they might just do it for their families, even if he used all kinds of reasons to argue for those villagers' behavior thousands of times. But when he saw Anton rushing towards the iron net, the wall in Oleg's heart seemed to have a crack. He was just afraid. He was afraid that he would be the next one to be hurt, afraid that he would be the only one to fight, afraid that even his best friends, even his lover would betray him in the end. Even a young man could do this, even if he was young, immature, even childish. However, a deep sense of shame filled Oleg's whole body at the same time. "Sorry, Nikita. I've let you down for such a long time. I think I really should break this cage." Oleg put down one of Andrew's men in front of him, and then retreated to Nikita's side, apologizing. "Can you solve this problem first, and then take me to the hospital? I feel that I'm dying," Nikita said weakly. He was very brave just now. He could be described as the best in the game. Nikita thought, but his stomach was still crazily shocked at the beginning, and when the belt burst, it also blew up a circle of wounds on his body, and blood flowed out. I'm dying. Don't talk nonsense. Cough. Hold on. Uncle Nikita will take you out right away. Anton turned back at this time and said quickly, Bastard, how many times have I said, at most it's brother, cough, it hurts. Indeed, hold on. Oleg took a deep breath. I'll definitely take you out. Oleg's sight and Anton's sight converged at the same time, converging on the open door. The moment the door opened, Andrew's figure appeared in the center of the door, biting a cigar, but people kept pouring in around him. These people were wearing protective gear and holding weapons in their hands. Some weapons were loaded with anesthetic. Chapter 263. The bullets of the tranquilizer gun looked like darts. The speed of this kind of thing was extremely fast. Oleg felt that he was not the Oriental martial arts master in the movies, so it was impossible for him to avoid this kind of thing. But he adapted quickly. After breaking the high wall in his heart, he felt the same as that year. He felt tired physically, but there was a belief of never giving up slowly growing in his heart. He and Anton dragged Nikita to the back of the ring at the first time, so as to block the sight of Andrew's men. These two guys were too horrible. They actually walked out of such a huge iron cage with human strength. Andrew's men, even if they had tranquilizer guns and electric batons in their hands, had to approach carefully at this moment. No one wanted to bear the heavy punches of these two humanoid brown bear-like guys because of carelessness. How do you feel? Leaning against the ring, Oleg asked Anton while gasping for breath to recover his strength. This sudden question made Anton stunned, but he soon smiled and said, It's really great. If we can beat all these stinky bastards, it'll be even better. Oleg smiled and suddenly patted Anton's shoulder. Do you see the cable connected to the iron net? Anton nodded hurriedly. Oleg whispered a few words in Anton's ear. Anton suddenly showed a nervous and excited look, nodding heavily. Go, brave young man. I will be proud of you on behalf of your father. Oleg said in a deep voice. Thank you. Anton showed a smile. At the moment when Oleg's sight was deeply imprinted in his heart, he suddenly rushed out from the back of the ring. He even let out a roar. Over there! Several strong men with tranquilizer guns aimed at Anton at the same time. But Anton was like a monster with amazing explosive power. The instant sprint was so fast that they couldn't catch Anton's figure for a while. The tranquilizer bullets missed their target one by one. At this time, Anton grabbed a guy he had hit before and put him in front of himself, forming a good human shield. Don't worry about this guy. There's one more. Andrew snorted. He reacted quickly and ordered his subordinates to pay attention to the other side. But it was too late. Anton, don't close your eyes. With his enormous arm strength, Oleg instantly pulled out the cable together with the iron net. Looking at the exposed wires, Oleg blew a deep breath to calm himself down. At the same time, he closed his eyes and quickly touched the positive and negative wires together. Hiss! Bang! In just an instant, all the light sources in the entire arena were completely extinguished. This battle of life and death, scheduled for midnight, completely eliminated the existence of sunlight. Only a few air vents let in the faint light of the street lamps, turning the place into an environment so dark that it was difficult to see anything clearly. Just as the lights went out, a scream rang out, followed by the dull sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. Andrew's men looked around nervously. Light the fire. Idiot, where are your lighters? Someone shouted, and at the same time, a light of a lighter appeared in the darkness. But in just a moment, the guy who lit the fire also screamed, and then there was no sound. Listening to the continuous screams, Andrew, who had slightly adapted to the dark environment, saw two black shadows moving quickly in the field. Andrew couldn't help narrowing his eyes. He really didn't understand that these two guys could make such a mess even with such an obvious advantage. These two people were indeed much stronger than ordinary people. They were completely at the level of first-class boxers. Andrew! A sudden roar. Andrew subconsciously looked towards the source of the sound. But at this moment, Andrew! Another loud shout was heard from the other side. Andrew gritted his teeth. He was also a ruthless person. At this moment, he stepped back 2 steps in an instant, retreated to the outside of the door, and pushed the iron door closed with force. He had a heart of love for talents, and he also intended to use these 2 guys to earn more benefits for himself. But if these 2 guys were so troublesome to the extent of threatening him, no matter how excellent they were, it didn't matter. "Hey, it's me. Get the weapons. Real guys." Andrew snorted coldly. But at this moment, the iron door was fiercely broken open, with a loud bang. With the dim light of the phone, Andrew saw Anton and Oleg rolling out of the iron door. Andrew was taken aback. These 2 fellows actually forcefully smashed through the iron door. These 2 guys, were they still human beings? Andrew suddenly took a step back. After that one step, he quickly turned around and ran toward the end of the corridor. "Don't run." Not knowing whether it was Anton's voice or Oleg's, Andrew's body was suddenly hit and then fell heavily to the ground. But he still retained the sense of touch as a boxer. Under the danger, he stimulated the nerves all over his body and fiercely kicked out with his feet in a panic. But at this moment, he didn't know who caught his leg, and then a kind of heart-wrenching pain suffocated Andrew. His leg had been forcibly broken. From a knee position, he suffered a terrible heavy blow, and the whole leg was broken into a nearly 90-degree angle. Then his asterisk was hit by an elbow, and Andrew directly fainted. Feeling that Andrew on the ground didn't move anymore, Oleg and Anton fell to the ground at the same time, back to back, gasping for breath. Oleg gasped and said with a hearty laugh, "How do you feel now?" "Great, great, great," Anton gasped. At this time, Oleg climbed up and said calmly, "But it's not over yet. If Andrew and his henchmen are completely eliminated, we'll still be in trouble. Then what should we do?" Oleg suddenly looked at the end of the corridor, listening to the approaching footsteps and a light source that should be the light source of a strong flashlight. He suddenly said, "Catch Andrew. I think we need to negotiate with these people." With that, Oleg shouted towards the end of the corridor, "Listen, your boss is in my hands. Now, prepare a car for me right away. Unless you want your boss to die like this, so you could divide his things." "Uncle Nikita, brother, come on. Let me help you. We're leaving here." Anton held Nikita's arm. "Oh, really? Okay." Nikita lowered his head and smiled. "I hope the hospital, the little girl in the hospital, can let me drink some vodka. Let's go, Nikita." Oleg patted Nikita's shoulder. At this time, Nikita raised his head reluctantly. With a pale face and pale lips, he squeezed out a smile. "Hey, brother, let's go back. Go back to the village. Kill those stinky bastards. Okay. Hey, brother, don't trap yourself again. I'm not sleepy." "Then, I'm sorry, what did you say?" "No, nothing. I want to take a nap. When we arrive. Call me." It was the first time for Anton to use this kind of thing, but he didn't have any fear. Besides, he didn't know many people, so he directly shot the tranquilizer bullet on Andrew's neck he had seen in the movies. "Mr. Oleg, he won't wake up now, right?" Anton asked quickly. Oleg, who was driving the car robbed from the casino, looked at Andrew, who was placed in the co-pilot's seat, and nodded. He frequently looked back at the back seat. "Nikita, how is it? Can you still hold on? Nikita? 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 Uncle Nikita?" Anton's crying voice came from the car. He didn't make fun of Anton, who was a grown-up, but still cried like a child. He just turned his head numbly, staring at the front of the windshield. Under the street lights and the asphalt road under the car lights, he could always see a bright place in front. Oleg drove the car like this 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers. He didn't look at any data on the dashboard, just fixed the accelerator and let the car go all the way. Suddenly, Oleg stepped on the brake and stopped the car. There were not many cars on the road at night, but Oleg opened the door. He got out of the car and licked and bit his lips. He looked forward, left, and right. He put his hands on his waist at the same time, raising his head, swinging it meaninglessly, and then patting his forehead hard. Again and again, faster and faster, more and more fiercely. Suddenly, he stopped his hand. Oleg pulled open the door of the back seat, dragging Nikita out. He knelt on the ground, holding the motionless body of Nikita, raising his head and opening his lips convulsively. He held Nikita's head in his arms, tightening the muscles on his face and closing his eyes. When tears flowed out, Oleg didn't cry. He only let out a roar. Ah! Ah! Anton looked at Oleg, who held Nikita, in a daze. He looked at Nikita, who was held by Oleg. Why was it like this? He couldn't figure it out. His knees hit the hard asphalt road, lowering his head and sobbing. Why don't you save him? On the long street, Kamala in the soul state looked at the businessman with tears in her eyes. Luaccio said, "People die every day. Who can I save?" Customer, although I can feel your desire to save him, it's a pity you don't have enough money for the transaction. Besides, Luaccio shook his head. He doesn't have a strong desire to live, but he is more satisfied. Satisfied? Kamala looked at him with astonishment. Luaccio said softly, "Don't you feel strange? You have left the village and concealed your identities, but you were still found easily, and then you had a car accident." Nikita, Kamala moved her lips, but turned her head, unable to bear to see the scene on the road ahead. Chapter 264. When Andrew woke up, he found that he was in a place like an abandoned factory. He was awakened by a splash of cold water, but he could still feel the numbness in his body. He felt lucky that he didn't feel the pain of his broken leg because of the numbness. But he didn't know how long the anesthesia could last. "You didn't kill me, which means there is still room for negotiation." Andrew took a deep breath, calmly judging his situation. Oleg and Anton were standing in front of him. They all looked at him with indifferent eyes. "No matter what the conditions are, as long as I can meet them, I will meet them." Andrew made himself look calm. Oleg sneered disdainfully at this time, suddenly moving his body away. Behind him, there was a mounted camera. Anton grabbed Andrew's hair at this time, making him face the camera lens, whispering, "Do you see it? What you need to do now is to confess all the crimes you've committed and the things you've done that you can't see the light of day." What do you want to do?" Andrew still tried to keep himself calm. But at this moment, Oleg suddenly walked to the side and opened the mechanism of a machine, a cutting machine. "Do you see this conveyor belt and the rotating cutting blade at the end of the belt? Andrew, do you want to have a taste? You dare to kill?" Andrew snorted. "If we don't kill you, we will only have more trouble." Oleg snorted, accompanied by the sound of the rotating cutting blade. "Do you want to say it or not? But you'd better not tell any lies, because we will verify them one by one. As long as you tell a lie, you will end up." Anton picked up a piece of wood from the ground and then threw it. The wood hit the rotating blade and was instantly divided into two parts. Andrew opened his eyes wide, breathing heavily with cold sweat all over his head. Sir, are you free? There's something important." "What's the matter?" "I'm going to have a meeting with my superior." "Something happened to Mr. Andrew." "Andrew? That stinky bastard. He caused me trouble again." "Umph. You better warn him that I can't cover up any trouble." "But sir, this time, you should open VK first." "Someone uploaded a video." "Sir, I think it's better for you to think about how to distance yourself from them." "What?" "VK, one of the largest social networking sites in Russia." "So fast." Anton looked at Andrew's apartment in surprise. It was Andrew's casino. At this time, many police cars were gathered here. Some of the casino staff were being handcuffed by the police and were being dragged out one by one. Andrew's video involves too many people. Naturally, those people will act as soon as possible. Oleg shook his head. It's the greatest value of this video confession to get rid of a malignant tumor like Andrew. It's much more valuable to keep some people quiet for a while than to kill Andrew to vent their anger. Using the video in his hand to topple those upper echelons, or even the oligarchs of the upper echelons who monopolize the economy and so on. That was just an impractical thing to do. "Mr. Oleg, what should we do next?" Anton asked in a low voice. Oleg pondered. "Listen, after all, we are involved in this matter. Even if Andrew will be convicted for these crimes in the end, we can't guarantee that our affairs won't be leaked out. So you have to leave." Anton was stunned. "But if I leave, what will you do?" Oleg smiled and patted Anton's shoulder. I will still stay here. I want to find my child. If I can find him, I will also leave here. But you don't have to leave in a hurry. Maybe it will take a few days before someone notices us. If you have something to do here, take advantage of these few days. This is my phone number. Call me if you have something to do. Mr. Oleg, holding the note in his hand, Anton looked at Oleg's back as he quickly ran across the road. He muttered to himself in disappointment, "Dad." Anton lowered his head and looked around aimlessly. He suddenly felt that there was no place for him to stay. He wanted to tell Oleg that Anton was Antonio, but he didn't know how to say it. If he hadn't made a wish to become an adult to that big brother, he wouldn't have met Uncle Nikita and wouldn't have been dragged to the arena by him. Uncle Nikita wouldn't have died, would he? Did I do something wrong? Anton was at a loss. He walked aimlessly on the street. Not knowing how long had passed, Anton stopped. He came to the park he was familiar with. Here he saw Oleg again. Oleg was sitting on the swing stool at this time, staring ahead blankly. He might be waiting for Antonio to appear here, in this park with more memories between them. Anton took a deep breath. He took a step forward and walked to Oleg step by step. Anton? Oleg felt someone coming. He looked up and asked in confusion, "Why are you here?" Anton took another deep breath and said, "Mr. Oleg, I want to tell you something." Oleg was stunned and nodded. "Go ahead. I have nothing to do now anyway." Antonio gritted his teeth and closed his eyes. "Actually, I'm Antonio. I met a magical big brother, and he made me an adult. If I hadn't grown up, I wouldn't have met Uncle Nikita on the street, and the later things wouldn't have happened. Dad, you wouldn't be sad. Uncle Nikita wouldn't have died, so... Anton knelt on the ground and lowered his head. "It's all my fault." "Why did you say it out?" Anton, who lowered his head, suddenly heard such a question. He responded subconsciously, "This is my responsibility. If I don't say it out, He raised his head abruptly, only to see Oleg sleeping. But on the other swing next to him, there was another person sitting there without him noticing. That was the big brother who made him an adult. It's you." Anton was surprised, happy, and scared. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Chapter 265. Oleg, Oleg, Oleg. Who is calling me? Is it the night of midwinter or early morning? Oleg looked at the swaying shadows of the trees in the dim lake-like light and shadow. Yes, the branches and leaves were covered with thick snow. They suppressed everything, but they were clearly layered. When he heard the voice calling him, he couldn't help but walk towards the source of the voice. "Oleg, Oleg, Oleg." I remember, it's Kamala's voice. "Kamala." Oleg's footsteps became faster unconsciously. He began to run at full speed until he pushed aside a bunch of branches pressed down by the snow with his palm. He saw the place where he was born, the small lake in front of the village where he was born. He seemed to see the past where he played here. He seemed to know. He saw the familiar back. The long chestnut red hair hung down her back, and the white dress was so thin. She was like a fairy in the lake. In a trance, Oleg suddenly had a kind of palpitation. His legs stepped on the snow, and the snow quickly went over his calves. He was so strong, but he looked so clumsy here. "Kamala." He finally came to the back of this figure and used his hands to wrap around the other person's back. Using all his strength, he pulled her into an embrace that could completely contain her body. Oleg lowered his head, burying his nose in the woman's long hair. He breathed hard, and every breath seemed so greedy. "Kamala." Every sound was filled with tenderness and reluctance to part. The woman also lowered her head, putting her face on the back of the man's broad hand, feeling the coldness of the back of the hand. But soon, the coldness was warmed up. "Oleg, I'm very happy now." "Me too." "Kamala." The gravity of the Earth's core made Oleg's head droop down. When he opened his eyes, he found himself still in the park, sitting on the swing stool. A dream, but it was indeed a long-lost, solid dream that washed away the sorrow in his heart. Oleg subconsciously looked at his palm, where the feeling of touch seemed to linger. He lowered his head and kissed the back of his hand. He smiled and said, "Goodbye, Kamala." When he took a deep breath and raised his head again, he felt a kind of motivation being injected into his body again. After 2 days and 1 night of weariness, new strength suddenly gushed out of his body. He stood up from the swing. He was still as tall as an iron tower, tall enough to block all of Antonio's sight, tall enough to even lift up the sky of Moscow. When Oleg was in front of Antonio, he raised his palm and heavily slapped Antonio's face. The slap was so loud that Antonio's small body couldn't bear it. He was instantly stunned and fell to the ground. "Stand up," Oleg said expressionlessly. Antonio covered his face and quickly got up without saying a word. "Hit me," Oleg suddenly said. Antonio was stunned. He hesitated for a moment, gritted his teeth, and clenched his fist, hitting Oleg's stomach with all his strength. "Use more strength. Use more strength. Haven't you eaten for many days?" Oleg snorted coldly. Antonio, on the other hand, retreated a dozen steps. Then, with a loud shout, he charged at Oleg fiercely. This made Oleg take a small half-step back. But Antonio was also rebounded and fell to the ground again. He looked up at Oleg, at his father who was still tall, and heard Oleg slowly say, "As a man, if you have any dissatisfaction, just say it. Even if you want to fight with me, it won't be a problem. But choosing to run away from home is not the behavior of a man. Do you understand?" Anil nodded. Oleg said, "I slapped you, and you slapped me. We are even, do you understand? That's not fair. I can't hurt you at all." Antonio muttered discontentedly. Oleg smiled. "Then grow up quickly and wait for the day when you can hurt me." Antonio made a face. Oleg touched Antonio's head and shook his head. "How does it feel to run away from home?" "Great." Antonio rubbed his nose and ran to the front excitedly. "Dad, let's have a race. Whoever runs home slower will have to do the housework today." But he had run out of the park. On the sidewalk on the side of the park, Antonio saw the fading figure and stopped subconsciously. "I have surpassed you, Antonio." That was the voice of Oleg who walked in front of him. Antonio ran 2 steps, quickly turned around, and tried to catch up with Oleg in front of him. "Why this time? Well, take it as a reward for your honesty. But your love has been sold to me, and there is no way to get it back. But someone gave you a chance encounter. In the future, you will meet a girl you truly love, but whether or not she can become your wife will depend on you to find out for yourself. Maybe you will fail, maybe you will succeed. Remember, you only have one chance." "Who gave it to me?" Big brother, big." The fountain in front of the Petrov Theater. A woman with long, chestnut red hair and wearing a white dress was lowering her head beside the fountain, praying devoutly. "Sorry to make you wait for so long in the end." The woman looked at Luaccio, who sat on the edge of the fountain, and waited for a long time, and said apologetically. Luaccio looked at the colorful world in front of him and shook his head. "It doesn't matter. I also want to thank you for letting me see so many colors." "Colors?" Kamala showed a puzzled look. Luaccio thought for a while, but shook his head and said, "Nothing, just some of my interests." Kamala was stunned, and a very light feeling suddenly filled her body. She didn't have a physical body, but this feeling was as real as having a physical body. Her spiritual body began to rise slowly. Suddenly, the man dragged the child's hand and came to the other side of the fountain. "Aren't you going home? Why did you bring me here?" "Antonio, if one day you meet the girl you love, you must bring her here. No matter what happens, don't miss it. Do you understand?" "Well, although I don't like watching ballet. Pray, your mother may be able to hear it." "Okay." Antonio closed his eyes and put his palms together. Suddenly, Antonio opened his eyes and looked at Oleg. "Dad, I seem to hear Mom talking." Oleg smiled. He always felt that if it was so efficacious, he should pray every time he came here. Although he didn't believe it, Oleg squatted down and said, "What did you hear?" Antonio said, "Thank you." Oleg was stunned and looked around blankly. "Thank you, thank you, thank you for letting me see the last of it." Kamala's figure slowly rose into the air. When her voice echoed in the non-human world, tears fell down along with it. Behind her, a pair of white wings suddenly opened, bursting out a dazzling brilliance. It shed all the darkness and let everything have its original color. The front and back of the Grand Theater, as well as the nearby streets, were filled with various colors. Luocchio seemed to be in a colorful banquet. Luocchio suddenly stood up obsessively looking at the colorful world brought by the brilliance. He raised his hands as if he was hugging. It's so beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. Kamala's figure gradually turned into a light ball, slowly falling and finally falling between Luacio's hands. I didn't expect that Miss Kamala's soul is actually an angel. No wonder the value is so high. Miss Maid stood behind the boss, with a look of admiration and a little surprise. Angel? Luacio shook his head, reluctantly gathering the light ball between his hands and turned around. No matter what it is, it's enough for me to see this color. Chapter 266. Balalaika. The Miss Chambermaid was now preparing the cocktail with 1 ounce of vodka and Caruso Blanco and the same amount of lemon juice. In the uppermost suite of the hotel-style apartment with a view of Moscow's night view, Yi said that they had made a good deal this time and that they should celebrate it. In Luacio's palm, the soul light ball that had just been received after the transaction was floating. The night view of Moscow outside the floor-to-ceiling glass window was full of colorful lights, and this soul light ball was also colorful. But it was no longer Kamara. It was only in its most basic form. As for Kamala, it had already disappeared the moment the transaction was completed. Just like an orange, after peeling off the skin, you can get the fresh, sweet, and juicy flesh. Kamara is this layer of skin. Boss Luo recalled Miss Maid's explanation of the situation. It was said that before him, when the previous boss was in charge of the club, such a situation had happened twice. But the quality of the angel's soul that was obtained in the first 2 times was not as good as the one hidden in Kamara this time. Miss Maid put the already mixed balalaika on the small round coffee table next to Luacio. It should be because Kamara was separated from the soul of the Taoist master very well. Yi also stared at the soul light ball in Boss Luo's hand with infatuation. This time, it has verified Master's previous idea. Idea? Luacio did not immediately respond. Yi, however, murmured a sentence that she had heard before. If time allows it to brew fragrance, are you willing to wait? Luacio raised the classical wine glass next to him. In theory, he was not used to drinking vodka, but he felt that this mixed drink unexpectedly tasted good. However, it was probably because there was no alcohol that could affect his body. There were also small slices of lemon on the side. Luacio picked one up and put it in his mouth. The sour taste made him frown. Why is the soul of an angel in the body of an ordinary person? Yi said, I've heard about it from my predecessor, but I don't know much. It seems that angels who make mistakes will be punished. They will be reincarnated in the human world and suffer in the human world. In the end, they can wash away the sins in their hearts and rush back to heaven, descending to the mortal world to undergo tribulation. Luacio said subconsciously. Miss Maid tilted her head. Luacio smiled and said, Our country has the same legend since ancient times. If the immortals in the heavens violate the heavenly laws, they will be banished to the mortal world. Only after experiencing enough calamities can they return to the immortal world. That's what the storybooks say. The servant girl nodded and said, Master, there are indeed many myths that have been passed down in your country. Luacio glanced at Yi. She couldn't directly read the account book on the first floor of the basement. But when collecting the accounts, it was indeed Yi who took out the account book by herself. This could be traced back to the fact that the previous boss was still alive. The previous boss was a qualified old otaku who didn't leave the boudoir for 3 steps. A qualified and very handsome otaku. Therefore, when he started to stay in the club, except for the guests who came to the door and he had to show up due to the rules, the work of collecting accounts was completed by Yi. The account book would automatically remind Miss Maid when the time was almost up, and what she could see was only the content of the transaction. So, she might not know much about heaven, or even nothing. As for the Eastern myths, it was probably the same. Heaven, heavenly court. Master, is there anything on my face? Yi looked at Luacio's eyes, blinking and asking. Luacio shook his head and said softly, I know you like to dress up, but don't worry. I stare at you not necessarily because there is something on your face, but because I like to see it. Yuye's eyes brightened, suddenly stood up, and said softly, Master, Wait a moment. Luochio wanted to know what Yu Yi was going to do, so he changed his sitting position and saw Yu Yi walk into the room of the suite. Soon after, the lights in the room were dimmed, leaving only the edge of the downlight, and it was still a warm yellow light. The sound system placed next to the TV screen automatically sounded at this time, and the music attracted Luochio's attention at once. He subconsciously grabbed the CD case that was placed on top of the sound system. He glanced at the cover. Almeida Palace. This was the background music of the ballet Palazzo di Almeida. Luochio knew what might happen next. He looked at the corridor with expectation. When the music suddenly sounded, Miss Servant Girl appeared in the hall of the suite. In such a short time, Yi couldn't find an orthodox ballet dress or even shoes, but it didn't seem to be a problem for Miss Servant Girl. It was black and made of silk. Draped over her body, it transformed into the thinnest and thinnest nightgown. Her fair skin could be vaguely seen through it, and it became her dance outfit. On the soft white carpet, dancing shoes didn't seem to be necessary. Yi stood on tiptoe with her left leg, and her right leg almost horizontally extended backward. She opened her hands. Like wings, they were slowly flapping. Her body leaned forward slightly. Was it because of the pajamas? Some more beautiful scenery was naturally displayed in front of Luochio. She was whirling. She was leaping slightly. She was stepping on the beat like a black swan skimming over a clear lake. She was dancing in front of her master, which she had never danced before. I just won't tell you what's going on. Equals sizzle. It should be the sound of frying eggs. Because of his physique, Miss Servant Girl didn't need to care about fat intake. Even if it was just frying eggs, she would use butter that tasted better. Luochio could already smell the aroma of breakfast. He opened the curtain of the suite's living room and looked at the city's morning in a good mood. Master, it's almost done, and the toiletries are ready. Miss Servant Girl's voice came from the kitchen. Luochio stretched himself and turned on the TV. He saw a news report. Chapter 267. Before sunrise, Victor was still enjoying a good dream with his wife in his holiday home in the suburbs when he was abruptly woken up by a phone call. It was a call from the police station. He had to end his vacation in advance after receiving the call. He rushed to the Tretyakov Museum of Fine Arts in the center of the city. Coffee? Milk? When Victor got out of the car, his partner ran over with 2 drinks in hand. Victor pushed him and walked straight to the cordon, passing through the crowd. The young Sheriff Yelgo could only shrug his shoulders as if he was used to it. He casually opened a cup of milk and drank it up quickly. After burping, he drank a mouthful of coffee and followed up. Don't waste food. Drink it up by yourself. Victor, who was working in front, clapped his hands and shouted, I want to see the person in charge of this art gallery and the person in charge of security in half an hour. And asked the police station to find out what those repeat offenders who were bailed out last night are doing now. And don't let any reporter in. Hurry up. After saying that, Victor snapped his fingers several times towards Yelgo, who was walking behind him. Yelgo had to quicken his pace to Victor. When he was about to say something, Victor had already grabbed the uncapped cup of coffee from his hand. After taking a sip, Victor walked towards the inside of the art gallery, which was the scene of the crime. Yelgo, who was about to say something, decided not to say it. Yelgo quickly followed Victor's footsteps and said quickly, the theft was discovered by the security patrol at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the overtime was at 3 o'clock in the morning. We have asked around, and we didn't hear any suspicious sounds or find any suspicious traces. It's very peaceful. Between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock? Victor nodded no. It's impossible to avoid the surveillance camera of the art gallery. Did you find any clues at the scene? No, not even a shoe print. Yelgo frowned and said, I looked around. The windows of the gallery were locked from the inside, and there were no traces of Special walking outside. This painting seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Disappeared into thin air? Victor stopped and snorted. Do you think it's a magician's performance? I didn't mean that, but it's really puzzling. The two quickly came to the place where the nameless maiden, was placed. After putting on his gloves and shoes, Victor leaned close to the wall and squinted his eyes as he carefully observed it. Yelgo had been looking at the scene for more than half an hour. At this time, He was not in the mood. He was just thinking about how to steal the mask. Furthermore, what was stolen was only the painting inside the frame. The frame was still here, safe and sound. Mr. Victor, do you think it was FNC who did it this time? Yelgo suddenly said lightly. Victor was stunned. He frowned in disgust. Freedom and clown. Boss Luo had been in a good mood since he woke up in the morning. In order to carry out the theme of visiting Moscow, after visiting several scenic spots in the morning, Luochio sat down at an open-air tea house under the introduction of Yu Yi. She said the snacks in this tea house were not bad. Boss Luo already knew that Miss Maid didn't need to eat. Then the question was, how did Miss Maid judge the snacks in this tea house? The answer was appearance probably. Yu Yi, who was sitting with him, was carefully cutting the cake into a small size to make it easier to eat. And Luochio, well, he was too idle. The club boss was reading the newspaper at this moment. Miss Maid, who should be very familiar with Moscow, didn't give the answer immediately this time. She took the newspaper from Luochio's hand, glanced at it, and whispered, "It seems to be a little thief who has just become famous recently." If it appeared after the club left, it was not strange that she hadn't heard about it. Luochio said with interest, "But it's also interesting to use Freedom and Clown as a nickname." Boss Luo even thought with interest, "Do you think this Mr. Thief also wore a clown mask when he committed the crime?" Yi looked at the newspaper again, thinking, according to the report, FNC has successfully committed more than 10 crimes and left calmly every time. Well, some of them gave out warnings before they went to steal things, but the rest of the time, they just directly stole the things and gave out a statement later. So it's hard to find out the pattern of their crimes, and no one knows their gender. This time, the theft of the nameless maiden may also be done by them. Maybe it won't be long before we see their statement. Boss Luo, who had just applied for a VK account under Yu Ye's guidance, opened it and found that the social media site was already discussing the theft of the famous painting. This Freedom and Clown has quite a lot of fans. Luochio began to browse the deeds of this thief. Well, every time after committing a crime, they will donate to charity in their own name. In this society, there are really people who will be strange thieves who rob the rich to help the poor. Oh, they have already made a statement. This was a video uploaded to VK. In front of the pure white background, only a head with a clown mask and a black hat could be seen. Even the voice was processed, so it was impossible to distinguish whether this person was male or female. FNC, the nameless maiden that went missing in the gallery last night, is now in my hands. There was only one sentence, and the short video finished playing in the blink of an eye, but the comments below had already exploded. Some people doubted that this was FNC himself, because this statement came too quickly. There are also some people who refuted that this might be FNC, because FNC was always irregular and could often surprise you. But more people were discussing which charity FNC would donate to this time. They had even started to ask how much the donation would be based on the immeasurable value of the nameless maiden. Beautiful lady, may I have the honor to perform a magic trick for you? Chapter 268. A dark blue suit matched with a round-face shirt. Tall but slightly indifferent. She also had short hair that made her look very capable. Luochio's eyes stayed on the other person's face for a while. There was no doubt that this was a very delicate face, and there was no doubt that this was a girl in a neutral dress, about 27 or 28 years old. Quite handsome. Street magician? Luochio asked curiously as he looked at the handsome woman who appeared out of nowhere. He subconsciously looked around as well. He didn't want to become a passerby in someone else's street photography, and then become the target of ridicule on VK or even YouTube. Don't worry, there's no one filming. The handsome woman smiled. Really handsome. Luochio nodded in his mind. But the handsome woman's eyes never left Yu Yi, who was sitting next to him. Hidden within her charming gaze was a yearning for beauty and pursuit. Perhaps there was also a hint of eagerness. "Are you two lovers?" she suddenly asked. Luochio said indifferently, "We will always be with each other." Wow. The handsome woman's eyes suddenly lit up as if she was praising him. Then, she opened her hands in front of Luochio and Yu Yi. Empty hands. She even flipped open the cuffs of her shirt to show that there were no hidden items. As a magician, her eyes should be very attractive. At this time, Luo Chio admired the other party's eyes. They were green like jade. At this time, the handsome woman picked up the napkin on the table. Her left hand clenched into a fist, and then she used her right hand to slowly put the napkin into her left fist. She began to blink her charming green eyes, and then put her left hand in front of Yi. She chuckled and said, "Can you give me a breath?" With Luochio's permission, Yi gently blew out a breath. The handsome magician took back her fist and kissed it. Then she stretched out her hand again and slowly opened her fingers in front of Luochio and Yi. There was a blue sea-like flower blooming in her palm. This was a bright flower with no jagged edges and split like a feather. Cornflower. The servant girl smiled, but she knew the flower's name. At this time, the handsome female magician smiled very gentlemanly. Only its blue can set off Mrs. Deep Blue Eyes. "I give it to you, my lady." Yi reached out and picked up the cornflower from her palm. When she just grabbed its petals, she suddenly looked at Luochio and said, "Can I perform a magic trick? Do you know how to do it?" Luochio was surprised. Yi directly grasped the cornflower in her palm and imitated the street magician at the beginning. She clenched her small hand into a fist and, at the same time, stretched out her other hand into a fist and made a simple crossing movement. Then it stopped in midair. The servant girl looked at the handsome female magician and said, "Guess, which hand is it in?" The female magician was stunned. Although she acted casually as a magician, her eyes were never really casual. His observational skills were like an instinct, seeping into every line of sight in his daily life. But at this moment, she had no way to determine which fist the cornflower was in. She didn't see any exchange movement of the beautiful girl. All the exchange movements couldn't be hidden from her. But if it was still in the original fist, it was not a magic trick. Perhaps it was just a simple psychological game. "Don't you want to guess?" Yi asked softly. The handsome female magician smacked her lips, showing a confident smile. She stretched out her finger and pointed at Yuye's small fist that originally grasped the cornflower. "Are you sure? If I guess wrong, I'll pay for you too," she said calmly. When the servant girl's fingers were opened like flowers blooming on the selected fist, she couldn't help opening her mouth slightly, until the empty palm was completely opened. She suddenly whistled without the annoyance of failure, but looked at the other fist of Yi, and this fist was also opened at this time. There was also nothing. "Well, I think I met a master." The handsome woman generously admitted her failure. "As promised, I'll pay for it. Then I won't bother you too." Seeing the back of the handsome woman walking to the counter to pay the bill, Boss Luo laughed. "Don't you think it's a pity to destroy this cornflower with black flame?" The servant girl once again verified Boss Luo's previous evaluation. She could always give a happy answer. "Besides the master's gift, is there anything else to cherish?" She tilted her head, making the string of diamond earrings under her earlobe shake slightly. It seemed that she hadn't taken it off since the day she put it on. Luochio's fingers tapped on the table gently, imitating the magician's gesture. His fingers curled into a fist and then opened. Another bright cornflower appeared. "Where are we going next?" When Vera walked out after paying the bill, she couldn't see the man and woman at the table. She walked to the table, suddenly squatting down, looking under the table, but found nothing. She couldn't help but laugh at herself. Then she sat down and carefully recalled the scene just now. How did he manage to fool her eyes? "Huh, dear Miss Vera, what are you laughing at?" At this moment, a man about 32 years old appeared beside Vera, holding a big paper bag of food and supplies. "If I tell you that I met someone who cheated my eyes, would you believe it?" Vera rested her head on her head, casually leaning back with the chair. The man opened his mouth in surprise, then shook his head dully. "No." "Huh." Vera shook her head. "I don't believe it either." "Well, stop joking." The man suddenly sat down, seriously saying, "Have you watched VK? What's the matter?" Vera asked casually. "Well, F&C just uploaded a video on VK, admitting that they stole the painting The Nameless Maiden from the gallery." Vera took out a pack of kiss from her clothes. "Vicar, did I go to the gallery last night?" Vicar said, Did you sleepwalk? Chapter 269. In a mess, he fled in panic in the streets and alleys because two men in suits and leather shoes were chasing after him. His face was filled with urgency, but his speed was inversely proportional to it. He had no choice but to support his right leg to adjust the direction he was walking in. As for his right thigh, there was a piece of grayish-white cloth wrapped around it. Of course, it was already bleeding profusely, like red ink melting in water, bright red and dark red. The blood that flowed out at different times actually turned into a clear pattern on the cloth. He couldn't walk fast, so he had to use the complicated city streets to get rid of the pursuers. Gradually, he thought, perhaps even I've lost my way. Sorry, he seemed to have bumped into someone, but he didn't have time to take a closer look. After a quick glance, he hurriedly walked into another alley. He didn't know that after he bumped into someone, something fell out his clothes, a tube of paint. Luaccio didn't need to do anything. When his eyes fell on the thing on the ground, the maid had already picked it up and brought it to him. Before Luaccio had time to look carefully, two men in suits walked out of the alley. Well, they were very close-fitting, straight suits. At first glance, they probably looked like elites. Seeing that there were only two people here, one of them saw the tube of paint in Boss Luo's hand and directly asked in English, "Did you see a man pass by? His leg is injured, so it should be easy to recognize him." Oriental face. The man directly switched to the language that was most likely to be able to communicate. Boss Luo immediately stretched out his finger and pointed in the opposite direction of the alley that the man had just hurried into. The man who asked the question took a look, then nodded and quickly walked into the alley. At this time, the companion behind him took out a wallet from the inner pocket of his suit and stuffed 2 bills into Boss Luo's hand. After quickly saying thank you, he also chased after the man. "Did I make money?" Luaccio looked at his maid inconceivably. Yui nodded and smiled. "Yes, master made money." Luaccio smiled and shook his head, but looked at the tube of paint in his hand with more interest. It had been used, and the tail had rolled to the middle position. Lemon yellow. Vera, who was chewing gum, had just walked around the art gallery that was robbed. Because of the theft, the art gallery was temporarily closed today, and there was a cordon around it. There are guards at the entrance. "Vicar, have you seen the situation in the art gallery?" Vera pressed her ear. The thing that was stuffed here was the communication device between her and Vicar, who was working in an RV. At the same time, in the RV parked on the other side of the art gallery, Vicar was facing 2 screens, biting a piece of toast and typing on the keyboard at high speed. He seemed to be too busy. "Dear Queen Vera, do you think I'm just cracking the computer of a high school student who only knows how to browse the internet? Then I'll go in and have a look." Vera whistled. Vicar had no time to care about the toast that fell from his mouth due to surprise, and hurriedly objected. "We don't know the situation inside. Those policemen shouldn't have left yet. You'll be regarded as, well, you're the most willful queen I've ever seen." The communication was temporarily turned off. Vicar could only sigh. He had to work harder on the work at hand. For Vera, she had many ways to sneak into the art gallery, but obviously she chose the most unimpeded way. As a magician, it wasn't difficult to obtain an ID card from an employee who had sneaked out to smoke. Of course, before this, the handsome Miss Magician had changed his set of clothes and put on a pair of very clumsy black-rimmed glasses and even changed her hairstyle. Just like that, the handsome magician swiped his card and walked in under the watchful eyes of the policeman guarding the door. There was obviously a policeman who was guarding the place where the stolen painting was stolen, but there was no such person. Probably he was interrogating somewhere. Vera walked calmly, but her eyes were like a falcon. In just a moment, she had completely memorized the place where the famous painting was stolen, even the layout of every place here. She began to picture the structure of the art gallery in her mind. Suddenly, a young man walked towards her at this time and directly shouted, "Wait a minute." When he was walking in his windbreaker, a corner of the gun bag could be vaguely seen. Vera gave a start and slightly stepped back, but met the man's eyes. "What's the matter?" The man said, "Where's the bathroom?" "Oh, my stomach seems to be a little uncomfortable." "Over there." Vera pointed at the bathroom. "Thank you." The man quickly nodded, My name is Yelgo. By the way, you look better without glasses. Vera narrowed her eyes, looking at Yelgo rushing to the place where she didn't know whether there was a bathroom or not. When she was about to leave, she heard footsteps. She hid behind the pillar, seeing a middle-aged man with a big belly hurriedly passing by and frequently looking back, as if he was afraid that someone would find him. Vera turned her eyes and quietly followed him. Well, I have just recorded a statement with the police. Well, everything is normal. ASAP, ASAP. But she could only hear such a one-sided answer. She secretly took a picture of the man's appearance with her mobile phone. Then she sneaked out of the art gallery. She took off her coat and glasses on the street and threw them into the trash can and then returned to the RV. Vicar breathed a sigh of relief at this time, but said with a blaming tone, I don't want to see you come back so easily because I prefer you to suffer some hardships. Vera took a bottle of beer from the fridge and opened it, walking to Vicar's side. She stretched out her hand on the table and quickly said, This painting disappeared by itself. You mean a magician made it go away, right? Vicar rolled his eyes. Vera turned on her mobile phone. Help me check who this guy is. What's his identity? Besides, can you buy some better glasses next time when you buy props? Vicar blinked and looked confused. He nervously poked his head out and was carefully looking back at the road he walked. He could only see 2 or 3 pedestrians. It seemed that they didn't catch up with him. He breathed a sigh of relief and slid down along the wall. The strenuous exercise made his lips look slightly lighter and dry, and the pain on his legs made his facial muscles twist together. Do you want to drink some water? At this time, a bottle of mineral water appeared in front of him. The man subconsciously looked up and saw a man and a woman. One of them seemed to be the young man he had just bumped into. Who are you? With a trace of hesitation and panic, the man put his hands on the wall and tried to prop up his body. You dropped this just now. Luaccio opened his palm, and the tube of lemon yellow paint was in his hand. The man was stunned and quickly grabbed the paint from Luaccio's hand and put it into his clothes. He seemed to relax a little and looked at the bottle of mineral water, subconsciously swallowing his saliva. So he quickly unscrewed the bottle and quickly drank a few mouthfuls. Then he carelessly wiped his mouth and showed a puzzled look. Someone is chasing me. Didn't they ask you for directions? He clearly remembered the distance between him and the person, so after he bumped into the person must have bumped into the man and woman. Well, I may have made a small prank. The man was stunned and hesitated. Why did you help me? Boss Luo whispered. Sir, have you forgotten? We've seen it before. Before? The man showed a stunned expression. Boss Luo said a few days ago in the art gallery. Sir, didn't you tell me about the nameless maiden? This was the lunatic I met in the art gallery that day. Yin PS1. I looked at the pages today and found that the clicks are half dead. Then let's increase the recommendation votes. Chapter 270. Don't you want to eat? Seeing this guy only ordered a glass of water to drink, Yuri put down the knife and fork in his hand and raised his head to ask. He had a very thick beard, and he had been wolfing down the food, so his originally terrible appearance naturally had an extra greasy texture. Luaccio shook his head and pointed to his chin. Yuri was startled, reaching out his hand to grab the curly beard and caught a slender strand. But he didn't dislike it and directly put the noodles into his mouth. After that, he continued to eat. After a long time, Yuri burped contentedly, not minding that he was now in a quiet restaurant. Why did you help me? You even invited me to dinner? Just because we've met before, and I don't have any impression of you? Luaccio drank a mouthful of water and said, that day, Mr. Yuri said that he loved this woman. Well, about the woman in the painting, there is no conclusion in the world. I'm curious why Mr. Yuri said it in a decisive tone. Yuri was stunned. He thought of many possibilities. In this frenzy of eating, it was not only his mouth that was moving, but he didn't expect that it was actually because of such a request. Yuri wiped his mouth with a napkin and then drank a mouthful of vodka before leaning on the table, narrowing the distance between him and Luaccio. Yuri stretched out 2 fingers, pointing to his eyes, and said seriously, If I say that my eyes can see through it at a glance, do you believe it? His eyes were wide open, and there were a lot of blood vessels around his brown eyeballs. Why not? Luocio said casually. If you believe it, then isn't Mr. Yuri a master of appreciation? It's a happy thing to know a master of appraisal. As for Luocio shook his head. Even if I'm cheated, it's no loss to me. Yuri opened his mouth slightly and suddenly laughed. It was the kind of laughter that was very interesting and incredible. Master, master. Yuri repeated mockingly. Yes, that's right. I'm a master, but I'm not a master of appraising paintings, but a master of painting, haha. Luocio took another sip of water. Does Mr. Yuri have any works? Yuri poured himself one cup after another, and his eyes began to droop as if he were in a daze. Works? Of course, there's a lot of them. They're all over the streets. They're even used to wipe your ass in the toilets. Mr. Yuri, have you heard of the saying, just a little taste is enough? Luocio asked as he asked the waiter for a cup of warm water, which he then brought to Yuri. But Yuri, who was obviously more interested in the bottle of vodka that was almost empty, remained indifferent. Why don't you drink when you can? We walked out of the restaurant. We weren't going to be friends anyway. You're just curious about what kind of person I am. That's why you're here with me and treating me to a meal. You probably want to know my story, right? Luocio said, I do have such an idea. Well, I'm interested in this aspect recently. Yuri sneered disdainfully. He glanced at the man and the beautiful woman beside him and muttered, Anyway, rich people like you love to sit in warm places and listen to cold stories. You can feel the coldness of winter in front of the fireplace and sigh with emotion. You can satisfy the pity that comes occasionally. Luocio, who didn't intend to explain anything, suddenly said, Mr. Yuri, do you need a rest? We can live upstairs. Yuri was completely like a drunk at this time. He supported his head with his palm, looking at the waiter not far away, and suddenly waved his hand. The waiter gave a start, and then walked over with a smile, politely saying, Sir, what can I do for you? Yuri suddenly said, Can you dance? Take off your clothes and dance here. The waiter gave a start, but still said politely, Sir, I think you may be drunk. What can I do for you? Yuri shook his head and smiled, turning his head to look at Luocio. He snapped his fingers at Boss Luo and suddenly said, How much money do you have? Luocio was really curious about what this vagabond man was going to do, so he signaled to Miss Maid with his eyes. Miss Maid took out a stack of brand-new large-denomination rubles from her handbag and put it in front of Yuri. Yuri whistled, picking up the brick-thick banknotes and scraping them with his fingers. He then stood up with the help of the table, staring at the waiter. Take off your clothes and dance here, and the money is all yours. Looking at the stack of banknotes in his hand, the waiter's expression suddenly became stiff. Ha 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 cough cough ha. Okay, go away. Yuri laughed, holding a bottle in one hand and a glass in the other, looking at the waiter who lowered his head and quickly picked up the clothes on the ground. In the restaurant, the waiter, who was only left with a pair of socks, a pair of underwear, and a bow tie, hurriedly grabbed his clothes and ran away. Yuri sat down again at this time. See, it's really a good thing to have money. Just like when you asked me to stay in this hotel, the waiter obviously looked down on me. But did you see what he did just now? As long as there's money, no matter it's mine or yours, he can take off his clothes and dance. He then burped. That stack of cash just now, for an ordinary person, you might not be able to earn that much in a year, but you took it without batting an eyelid. You didn't even react when I gave it to the waiter. You just wanted to see what would happen next. Things that can make people put down their dignity are just props for you to watch a show. Boss Luo drank the third mouthful of water indifferently. Mr. Yuri, what do you want to say? Since you like to watch interesting things so much, why don't you give me a lot of money? As Mr. Yuri said, money really means nothing to me. Luocio nodded, so it's appropriate to use it as a tool. But just now I gave you money out of curiosity, and you also show me some interesting things. But this is just a small matter. Looking at Yuri, Luocio said indifferently, But Mr. Yuri, what do you think you can show me if I give you a huge amount of wealth? Yuri laughed. Yes, what can I see? He seemed to be thinking hard as he shook his head again. Hmm. Hmm. Well, oh, let me think. Yes, you should be able to see me enjoying a comfortable life, no longer being tired by life, see me going in and out of high-end places, see me surrounded by beauties, see me living a dreamlike life of ordinary people. With another hiccup, Yuri almost fell asleep. Is this enough? But I'm not interested in these. Luaccio shook his head. Oh, really? Yuri's head leaned back, and his legs stretched out naturally, sitting in an extremely indecent posture. But you can buy a lot of wealth from me. Buy? Yes. Some people can take risks for money, engage in high-risk jobs, and even get infected with diseases and overdraft their health and life. Some people can give up their dignity for money, and some people can turn against their family for money. Doesn't Mr. Yuri feel that these people are selling their important things while gaining a lot of wealth? Or they're overdrafting their lives? Yuri pointed at Luaccio, giggling. You mean I can sell these things to you? That's really good. Good. Puff. But before he could finish his words, Yuri fell headfirst onto the dining table and fell into a deep sleep. To him, all the words he said just now were just nonsense after drinking. Perhaps he would forget them after he sobered up. Chapter 271. He would have a splitting headache when he woke up, which should be the daily experience of people who are used to drinking vodka. Yuri had already woken up. He found himself lying on a very comfortable big bed. Yuri silently looked at the exquisite decoration on the ceiling. I met a weirdo, Yuri said to himself. At the same time, he planned to take a bath so that his head wouldn't be so heavy. But when he sat up, Yuri saw a black card lying quietly on the cabinet on the windowsill. He subconsciously grabbed the black card. The moment his fingers touched it, some distorted images flashed through his mind. He recalled some of the things that happened before he got drunk. Then he suddenly stood up and walked quickly to the window. The moment he opened the window, Yuri threw out the black card in his hand. He didn't know why he did that, but he had an impulse which made him feel at ease instinctively. After taking a bath and eating breakfast in a hotel lobby, Yuri looked around and suddenly didn't know where he should go, just like when he came to this city for the first time. But it was different from the excitement and the confusion at that time. Now the excitement had long disappeared and was replaced by sadness. Should I leave this place? Yuri asked himself quietly. But he soon got the answer. No. Taking a deep breath, Yuri turned around and walked into the hotel. In the hotel lobby, he sat there, staring at the big clock on the wall, and fell into meditation. But after the minute hand moved half a circle, Yuri gritted his teeth, borrowing a phone from the lobby and dialed. Yuri tried to make himself look calm and confident. The clerk at the front desk didn't notice him, but lowered her head to work. Yuri turned around at this moment, pretending to casually look at the entrance of the hotel. The phone was connected. It's me. You didn't think that I could escape. It's really nothing, Mr. FM. I'm in a terrible situation now. Because of this, I need you to pay me the reward I deserve. What's the point of fighting? Yes, as you said, a poor guy like me, Mr. FM, of course, thinks I can't make any waves. But, Mr. FM, do you think I'll call you directly if I don't have something in hand? When the other side of the phone was silent, Yuri sneered. It's very simple. I just want a considerable reward. Tonight at 8 o'clock, Lukabayan subway station. Ask Anna to come and talk with me personally. After that, Yuri decisively cut off the communication. This was already the 27th card. They flew down from Vera's fingers for about 3 meters, and then stuck on a wooden main beam, one by one, up and down neatly arranged. Don't get me wrong, this was actually a card made of metal. If it was just a simple card, did it think it was God of Gamblers? I found the guy's information. Vicar walked out of the room while holding the printed document in his hand. Vera, who continued to throw the 28 cards, said indifferently, Tell me about it. This guy's name is Yakov, the owner of the art gallery. He has been working for 13 years and came from Belarus 20 years ago. Well, he's married with a son and a daughter. Vicar said simply. In addition, he has registered accounts in 3 different online casinos. Well, this guy has a lot of bets. But basically, he loses more than he wins. It seems that this owner's income is really good. Vera kicked her legs, turning the swivel chair to face Vicar. The 29 card made of metal flew over Vicar's head, scaring the thin man into a cold sweat. There's something wrong with this guy. You think this painting was stolen by Yakov? Vicar blocked his face with the folder in his hand and walked to Vera carefully. Seeing that she didn't continue to throw cards, he was relieved and sat down. Vera kept turning the chair. He loses more than he wins, so his financial situation must be very bad. But he can continue to bet, which proves that his family is very good. Obviously, the salary of an art gallery owner can't support him. He has extra income. Vickers said quickly. He steals these famous paintings from the art gallery with his power, and then amasses wealth. Vicar patted his head, pointing at Vera. In order to not expose his own affairs, he framed you. Vera rolled her eyes, patting Vickers' arm away, and corrected him. It's F&C who was framed, not me. Well, then what are you going to do? Vera pondered for a moment. I just feel strange. How did he make this painting disappear by itself? Vicar, shouldn't you care about how to clarify this matter? Vera suddenly stood up and put on her coat. Vicar quickly frowned. 2 days ago, the leader of a gang who ran illegal boxing matches was caught by someone, and a lot of inside stories were exposed, which implicated a lot of people. The world-famous painting was suddenly stolen. I think the police must have taken hormones now, so you'd better not mess around. Since the painting was stolen by F&C, of course, it should be in the hands of F&C, right? Vera smiled evilly. I'll go to this guy's home, and you should be ready to support me. She didn't listen to the warning at all. Didn't you say you came to Moscow for a vacation? Bang! The door was closed. Rumble. In front of the platform, when the subway car stopped, it brought a strong airflow. When it completely stopped, the platform, which was still in the rush hour, suddenly became crowded. Anna was a woman who could show the traditional beauty of Russian women. She simply carried a small long belt bag and didn't stand up until almost all the people who needed to get off the car got off and walked towards the door. With a charming smile, she walked like a model walking on the catwalk. The combination of traditional and modern beauty attracted a lot of men's attention at once. She seemed to be looking for something, looking around in the crowd. Stop. Don't turn around. Suddenly, Anna heard such a voice. A voice appeared behind her. The voice continued. Now, slowly turn to the side of the rail. Remember, don't turn around. She even felt something poking her gently at her back. Even if the other party couldn't see, Anna still showed a smile, slightly tilting her head, and whispered, Yuri, relax. I'm glad you told Mr. FM to let me talk to you. I'm so happy to see you again. Yuri sneered. Really? Would this make you happier than when you were lying on that pig, FM? And aside, Yuri, you should know I also have my difficulties. I didn't really want to deceive you. Well, Ms. Anna, I'm not a kid. I won't let myself be depressed because of this kind of thing. My anger has long passed. Yuri said indifferently, I don't care if you have feelings for me or not. It doesn't matter. I only want money, understand? Anna suddenly said, I heard that you have something in your hand. What is it? Do you think I'll let you ask? Yuri sneered. Anna nodded. Well, since you're so straightforward, then I'll also be straightforward. How much do you want? Besides, don't you think it's more convincing and more advantageous for you to let us see, even if it's only a small part of it? If there's no proof, we won't give you anything so easily. At the same time, Anna quietly lowered her arm. In her palm, a small makeup mirror box quietly opened and swayed, illuminating the back. 10 million euros. No problem, but at least you have to let us see part of the evidence. Anna said indifferently. Yuri snorted. Do you think I'll let you see it? There's no room for negotiation. You can only choose to give or not. Yuri, Anna suddenly called, and turned around, looking at Yuri. I told you not to turn around. Don't you want to shoot me to death? Yuri opened his eyes wide, but couldn't hide the panic in his eyes. Anna smiled, looking at the clothes covering Yuri's arm. She stretched out her hand, grabbing Yuri's arm, and opened the clothes. She moved quickly. Since when can fingers shoot bullets? Umph, Yuri snorted and said with difficulty, even if you try it, so what? Do you think I'll take such an important thing with me? Let me tell you, if I can't go back safely, Tomorrow, the whole Moscow will know about you. Don't be nervous. Anna pursed her lips and smiled, taking a step closer to Yuri. Don't come over. Yuri stepped back subconsciously. Anna was still moving forward, and Yuri had to step back step by step, until he felt that he was leaning against the wall, and there was no way to retreat. He had to think about escaping from this place. But his arm was quickly caught by Anna. This woman was very fast. She kissed him on the lips in an instant. He had enjoyed the passionate kiss. One night after another, he was lost in this kind of gorgeous kiss. But he soon woke up. Again and again, the pain that exceeded the limits of his body caused his pupils to dilate rapidly. Anna had a small, silver, and very delicate pistol in her hand. At the moment when the subway entered the station, it rang several times in the harsh breaking and rumbling sound of kneeling. Through the clothes that Yuri had grabbed before. Twice or 3 times. When Anna's kiss left, it was also when her hand came up to cover it. Anna stood on tiptoe, like whispering between lovers, and whispered in Yuri's ear, "Dear Yuri, maybe you don't know that I know you, even better than you know yourself. Your eyes, your little movements, I remember them all in my heart. So, talking is not something a good man should do." Anna, Yuri felt that his strength was leaving him quickly. "I'll miss the days with you." Anna opened the clothes and threw herself on Yuri's body like a wife. "Goodbye." She stepped back, turned around, and walked into the subway that was about to leave. "I shouldn't stay here. I should leave this place." He regretted it. Yuri's body slowly slid down along the wall. He didn't even have the strength to speak. When he sat down on the ground, there was a bright red color on the wall. People finally found that there was an injured man here, and it was extremely chaotic. Some came over to check, and some hurriedly called for an ambulance. Yuri just felt that the sound was getting away from him, and the light and shadow in his sight became blurred and overlapped. He seemed to catch something. When his body completely fell to the ground, he found that there was a black card in his hand. Was it the card that he threw away? Yuri didn't know, but he heard the sound. Chapter 272. In the evening, St. Basil's Cathedral. The inside of the cathedral was like a castle with several onion tops and colorful colors. It was also the place where tourists were forbidden to enter. Anatole had finished his prayer today. When he turned around, he saw Bishop Peter in a white robe. Anatole hurriedly walked to Bishop Peter and said respectfully, "Bishop, are you looking for me?" "Anatole, come with me," Bishop Peter said softly. Anatole nodded without hesitation and followed the bishop closely. He found that the place he was going to seem to be a forbidden place. Moreover, he could feel that the holy power had become more and more intense. This was something that could only be felt by the clergyman with extremely devout faith after special practice. As for using it, it was even more difficult. Anatole was the most elite of this generation of Eastern Orthodox Church. After finishing his study in the monastery, he was appointed to practice in this church. Although he had the qualification of a priest in the Eastern Orthodox Church, he was just a fledgling in the real church. "Bishop Peter, this is—" Anatole had to express his doubts. But the bishop in front of him didn't say anything, but pushed a door at the end of the corridor. It was also a small church. The statue of the Holy Father was in front. Anatole found that a man was standing in front of the statue of the Holy Father. He was also in the priest's costume. Bishop Peter looked at Anatole and whispered, "Go in, relax, but also be in awe." Anatole saw a rare solemn expression on the bishop's face. This made him confused, but he could only follow the bishop's words. When he walked into the small church inside the church, Anatole found that the bishop had closed the door. The bishop didn't follow him in. After taking a deep breath, Anatole came to the priest's back. All of a sudden, he felt a majestic saint power that he had never felt before from the other party. To him, it was as deep as the ocean. God's grace was as deep as the sea. For some reason, this sentence suddenly appeared in Anatole's mind, causing him to lower his head instinctively. He had forgotten what he wanted to say at first. "Raise your head." Finally, the strange priest seemed to turn around. Anatole raised his head and couldn't help showing a surprised look. He had seen this priest before. He was the most common clergyman who received visitors in the church. How could he? Are you Anatole? According to Peter, you're the youngest priest to graduate from the monastery in recent years. Yes. Anatole didn't dare to make any mistake and nodded. However, he appeared to be unusually calm and did not panic because of the vast saint energy coming from his opponent. My name is Sullivan. Hello, Mr. Sullivan. Sullivan smiled faintly. There was some appreciation in his eyes, as if he was satisfied with Anatole. However, he suddenly asked, "Did you feel it 2 days ago?" Anatole nodded. There was a very pure fluctuation of faith, but it soon disappeared. I have never felt such a pure soul aura. Sullivan suddenly said, "Do you know what it means?" Anatole shook his head. Sullivan said seriously, "It means that the soul that suddenly appeared will become a saint of the kingdom of heaven in the future." Anatole was stunned and showed a surprised look. Finally, the calmness on his face was reduced a bit. He knew what the saint of the kingdom of heaven meant. Sullivan continued at this time, "Do you know that you were originally responsible for monitoring this soul?" Anatole opened his mouth and frowned subconsciously. "Sir, I don't quite understand what you mean by being responsible for monitoring." "Close your eyes," Sullivan said indifferently. "I will remind you of what you have forgotten." Anatole didn't obey at once. He looked at this ordinary priest who was originally in charge of receiving tourists. After a while, he slowly closed his eyes. "Why have forgotten?" He was still confused. But no matter what, he was really curious. At this time, Sullivan stretched out his palm and put his finger on Anatole's forehead. At the same time, he closed his eyes and his body began to release some hazy brilliance. It was slightly white and serene. "My lord," he began to speak in an ancient language. Anatole found that he had studied this ancient language in his spare time in the monastery, but he couldn't translate it completely. He couldn't even understand what Sullivan said next. He just felt that a more majestic holy power was slowly flowing into his body like water. It seemed to be blending with the holy power in his body. Gradually, some abnormal hazy scenes appeared in Anatole's mind. He couldn't see it clearly. It seemed that someone had said something in his ear, but he could only see half of a hazy face. The lips seemed to be moving, but there was no sound. Suddenly, Anatole opened his eyes. He felt a stinging pain in his head. He subconsciously took a step back and had a look at Mr. Sullivan. What he saw was that Mr. Sullivan was looking at him with a kind of surprised and uncertain eyes. Anatole didn't feel that he had remembered anything. Even the image that had just appeared in his mind gradually disappeared. "Sir, I still can't remember." Anatole said slowly. Of course, there was some doubt in his eyes. Was the sea of God's grace shown by this guy just an illusion? It was very embarrassing. "I know." Sullivan nodded slowly. He slowly turned around and looked up at the statue of the Holy Father in front of him. He didn't speak. It was still the sea of God's grace that Anatole felt before he came here. But in fact, he was really embarrassed. But at the same time, he was afraid of something. "Get out of the way! Get out of the way! Get out of the way!" The medical staff, wearing hospital uniforms and carrying a stretcher, hurriedly pushed the crowd aside and shouted, "Where is the wounded?" But when they finally arrived, they only saw a pool of blood still attached to the wall, but no one was there. "Where is the wounded? Didn't you say that someone was shot?" "He was there just now, but disappeared in a blink of an eye." The ambulance squad leader frowned and suddenly said angrily, "You tell me that a person who was shot down and bleeding so much can disappear in front of you in a blink of an eye is actually a magician who can teleport, right? But enough. This is a prank. Who called the ambulance just now?" Chapter 273. Vera went out in the afternoon, but she came back when she was waiting for dinner. She had no expression. Vicar, who was familiar with her, knew it was because Vera didn't gain anything. Yakov's family has nothing. His wife is a typical housewife. His son has marijuana in his room. His daughter is a girl who likes to party, but is seriously out of shape. Vera sighed. It's a typical middle-class family. Really? But I have news on my side. Vicar shrugged his shoulders. Vera sat down casually with her legs crossed and hands on the back of the sofa, waiting for the good news. Vicar, who had been used to this, sighed. "To be precise, you got some news. Can you be more direct?" Vera was a little impatient. Vicar could only say, An invitation letter has been sent to your private mailbox with the time and place indicated. 3 days later, there will be an auction of the nameless maiden. My private mailbox? That one? Vera frowned. Vickers shrugged. Who else can it be? Of course, it's Vera. Talk taken off. Vera was silent for a while, and suddenly said, Who is the inviter on the invitation letter? Vickers said seriously, FNC. Vera suddenly said indifferently, I don't remember, my private mailbox was sent everywhere. Vickers could only laugh. Dear Princess Vera, have you forgotten why you ran away from home? Although you didn't send. But there are a few big bosses in the party who care about your future life. Don't you know how many love letters from all over the world you receive in your private mailbox? These are all my. Vickers pointed to himself. I take time out to reply to you every day. Vera suddenly squinted and smiled. Are those love letters handsome? Vickers nodded repeatedly. Not bad. Some of them could be described as perfect. Vera walked to Vickers with a smile. The delicate smile on her face was like a female leopard in Vickers' eyes. He could only swallow his saliva. I didn't do anything, really. I just asked for some photos. Vera's fingers twirled rapidly. Vickers was stunned, but his intuition told him that nothing good would happen. But experience also told him that if he didn't do it, there would be something worse waiting for him. He could only turn around. Vera sneered. She picked up the TV remote control and stabbed it into Vickers' groin. Oh, be gentle. Ouch. Do you feel good? Vera whispered in Vickers' ear. Vickers, who had clamped his legs, said bitterly, It's a bit dry. I haven't used it for a long time. Oh, gently, gently. Give me some evening gowns tomorrow. Get ready. I'm going to attend the auction. Vera loosened her hand and turned Vickers around. With a sudden force, she pressed Vickers' body onto the stool. Vickers let out a painful cry and said at the same time, Did you hear that clearly? Clear, clear. Vera clapped her hands and returned to her room in a carefree manner. Vickers held the chair and stood up. He pulled out the remote control slowly with a weird face. Finally, he showed an incomparably comfortable expression. He sighed. Feeling it didn't seem too bad. So he stared at the remote control on the ground, seeming to think about something. He was about 60 years old and dressed appropriately. Every movement of his was textbook standard. White socks. A pocket watch chain could be seen peeking out from a bag. When Yuri woke up again, he saw such an old man standing beside him. The old man's hair was gray, but he looked full of energy. This was a room that was at least 10 times more luxurious than the hotel suite he had woken up in the last time he had woken up. I should be in the subway station. Yuri hesitated. He sat up and tried to figure out what was going on. He subconsciously touched his abdomen and found that there were no wounds on his body. Even his leg, which had been injured earlier, seemed to be in perfect condition. Mr. Yuri, the hot water is ready. You can take a bath right away. The old man said with a smile. I'm not dreaming. Yuri opened his mouth. He couldn't remember when he had been so respected by such an extraordinary old gentleman. Where's this place? Who are you? Edgar. Please call me Edgar. The old man smiled calmly. This is Kajia Manor. Your manor, sir. Sir, please take a bath as soon as possible, because it's extremely impolite for a noble to let the guest wait for you. My manor? Noble. Noble? The bathroom was spacious, comparable to an 80-square-meter room. Even in the connected dressing room, there were more than 20 sets of luxurious clothes. Many neckties, a quick watch, belts, hat, shoes. Even when Yuri came out of the bathroom in a daze, a gorgeous maid shaved his beard. It was so strange that Yuri felt that he was drunk in his own dream. Looking out of the bathroom window, he could only see a small corner of the manor, a huge lawn that was built very smoothly. He didn't even see the fence. He couldn't even believe that the person in the mirror was himself. His messy beard had been shaved off, and his messy hair had been trimmed until it was shiny. Coupled with his luxurious clothes, he looked like a completely different person. At the end of the corridor, Edgar was already standing in front of a room, waiting. When Yuri, who was still in a daze, arrived, Edgar opened the door for him. At the moment when the door was opened, Yuri couldn't help but exclaim, It's you. Have a seat. Luaccio, who was drinking black tea, glanced at Yuri, who came up with a smile, and then put down the teacup in his hand. Miss Maid immediately added new black tea to the teacup. Even though there were enough servants in the manor, Miss Maid still insisted on serving her boss by herself. "What's going on?" Yuri frowned and sat down. He found that Edgar didn't follow him in, but closed the door after he came in. "Mr. Yuri, have you forgotten?" Luaccio suddenly asked. "The thing you want from us." Yuri was stunned, and a stinging pain suddenly appeared in his head, which made him subconsciously grab his hair. His face seemed to turn pale in an instant. When his eyes recovered from confusion to reality, Yuri looked at the young man with an oriental face in amazement. No, to be exact, it was the mysterious young man. I can't believe I said something like that." He recalled the words he had said before, but he didn't say it again at this time. Such incredible words, but seemed to have become a reality. Yuri had to believe what happened in front of him. The most direct and powerful proof was not what he had encountered in this manner, but the fact that he should have died, but was still alive and well. Luaccio suddenly said, "We believe that most of the words a person says before he dies should be true. Mr. Yuri, the contract has been reached. In the next month, you are not only the owner of the manor, but also the heir of the Typica family. Your identity is..." Boss Luo smiled slightly. "Yuri Typica, a Tsar aristocrat who was exiled abroad during the October Revolution, now lives in Morocco." Typica. Looking at Yuri's incredible expression, Luaccio snapped his fingers. At this time, Miss May took out a box and pushed it to Yuri on the table. "Mr. Yuri, this is the seal of the Typica family, as well as the family badge. These are all things that can represent your identity. I'm a noble, a descendant of a noble." Chapter 274. Later, Yuri called Edgar to his side, asking him whether he knew the two guests he had just seen. But Edgar showed a blank expression, saying, "Sir, did any guest come here just now? Why don't I remember?" Forgot. Completely forgot. Not only Edgar, but even the beautiful maid who shaved his beard and the strong bodyguard who worked as a part-time driver in the manor said they didn't see anyone come here. Yuri sat in the study room and stared blankly. But even though it was a study room, it was decorated like a palace. Beside him was the seal that was said to be able to use all the assets belonging to the heir of the Typica family, as well as 15% of the total assets of the family. "Edgar, how much is my personal assets?" Yuri asked subconsciously. "Sir, your personal assets are nearly 1 billion euros. Family. What about the family? I'm afraid it will take some time to get an accurate figure from the new accounting." Edgar said respectfully, "Sir, the international market is always changing. The specific statistics should be done at the family banquet at the end of the year. But the statistics last year was 75 for billion euros. 15%. 75 for billion euros. Yuri had to wipe his face with both hands to calm himself down. Edgar, however, did his duty well and said, "Sir, are you not feeling well? Do you need a doctor?" "Oh, there was a private doctor in the manor." "No, I want to be alone. You can go out first." Yuri calmed down and said. Edgar nodded. His hands were on his thighs, and he slightly bent down, leaving the study room straightly. Yuri subconsciously pinched his eyebrows, lying on the back of the chair, looking up at the ceiling pendant. Such a pendant. With the salary he used to work in the art gallery, it might take him 8 to 10 years or even more to afford it. But only 1 month's time. Yuri slowly closed his eyes, because he knew that such a month of extreme luxury was exchanged with almost everything he had. In the building, Anna waited for the elevator to show the number of the floor she needed to reach. Ding! She walked out of the elevator, but there were already 2 men guarding the elevator. The 2 men skillfully scanned her body with the scanner from front to back. But she seemed a little dissatisfied. "Do I need to do this every time?" "Miss Anna, you should know that apart from Sir's family, everyone has to go through this step," one of them said calmly. The other one said indifferently, "That's enough, Miss Anna. Mr. Ephraim is already waiting for you inside." Anna chuckled and playfully said, "Fortunately, when I was sleeping with your boss, you weren't watching from the side. Otherwise, I think even if your boss was as strong as a brown bear, I wouldn't be able to get high. They pretended not to hear him. They returned to the left and right sides of the elevator like statues. Anya retracted her gaze and walked into the high-tech room. The glass walls in the room were almost 180 degrees, and the height of the building was high enough for her to have a broad view. You're back. At this time, a stout, fat, middle-aged man slowly walked down the spiral staircase leading to the upper floor. Has it been settled? He continued. Anna flipped her hair with a seductive smile. She suddenly reached out her finger and slowly pressed it on her chest. She slowly moved it down and paused. Here, and here, 3 bullets. FM just glanced at it indifferently, then nodded and walked to the bar. He suddenly said, "How much was that guy's original offer?" 10 million euros. FM listened with no expression, as if he had just heard it. He took out 2 glasses and uncorked the bottle. After pouring 2 glasses of wine, he walked to Anna and handed her a glass. "You should mourn for him, Miss Anna." Anna smiled, gently touching the glass in her hand with FM's. "Isn't it us? It's a pity that Yuri died like this." FM shrugged. "But I don't like disobedient guys. Come here, I'll show you something." Saying this, FM walked to the corner of the room, the corner in front of the glass curtain wall. There was a shelf here, and the shelf was covered with a white cloth. Anna seemed to know what it was, and her eyes lit up. "Open it." But FM walked to the sofa next to him. Anna took a step forward and lifted the white cloth on the shelf. It was the unknown maiden. Anna's eyes flashed with a trace of infatuation. She stretched out her finger and gently slid down the frame of the painting. "It's so beautiful. This is the art gallery's nameless girl." "No." Unexpectedly, FM said indifferently. "This was painted by Yuri." Anna gave a start. She couldn't help but frown, turning around and looking at the Moscow tycoon. "Yuri?" FM chuckled. "That's why I said it's a pity that Yuri died." Anna still frowned, seeming to think of something, subconsciously saying, "Are you going to auction this fake in the auction the day after tomorrow?" "Who said it's fake?" FM said slowly. "The painting was stolen from the art gallery by F&C, and now F&C put it up for auction, so it's real." "I know it's a pity." Anna walked to FM with a charming smile. She even took off her high-heeled shoes and finally sat on FM. "You should have a lot of the nameless girl. I really shouldn't let Yuri die like this, because he really did it." She originally thought that FM would sell the real stolen painting at the auction and then use the fake created by Yuri to find a group of people who didn't know the art but got rich and make a lot of money. But she didn't expect that. Yuri could pass off the fake as the real one and make an almost perfect imitation. Even just now, if FM didn't say it himself, she would have been cheated. Since he could cheat her, he could naturally cheat most of the collectors. No, all of them. Not most of them. "I'm really sorry." Anna's eyes turned, lowering her head and still smiling charmingly. "I think I should make it up to you." But FM said, "No, just help me to bid for the auction the day after tomorrow. I have an appointment to have dinner with someone. I'll go out soon." "Let me go. Let me go. Let me go." "Do you know who I am? How dare you lock me up here? I want to see your president." "Let me go." Someone shouted in the police station. So the young agent Yelgo, who had just come back after working hard for a long time because of the art gallery, couldn't help but frown and ask his colleague, "What's wrong with this guy?" God knows this guy was caught stealing in a convenience store. He said he's the descendant of a noble family, the heir of a big family, and wants to see our president. "I'm a descendant of a czar." "Huh.